Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pucks and Brews. I am your host, Michael Shade Sparacino, alongside, as always, Liam, the Shellmaster Godimer. And I just realized this as I was doing that. This is like our last full-on loaded episode of the season, and that makes me a little bit sad on the inside. But nonetheless, this is Pucks and Brews. And Liam, I just said I had a surprise for you. It is literally the new addition to the Dunkin' menu, s'mores cold brew.
Oh my.
Yeah, I'm literally trying this on the spot, so I will give my
We need
predict.
a we need a Dave Portnoy type review.
Dave, yeah, one sip. Everybody knows the rules. Literally, the day that my friend showed me that, one bite. Everybody knows the rules. We literally went either to, I forget whether we went to 7-Eleven and had pizza there, or we went to McDonald's and I tried the Big Mac for the first time. But one of those two things happened the night that my friend showed me the Dave Portnoy one bite, everybody knows the rules thing. This is episode 64 of Pucks and Brews. I gave this a nice stir up, and let's take a sip. That is that's pretty good. That is
We're,
pretty good. I
we're-
recommend. Not sponsored. Not sponsored. Recommend. All right. But man, that put me in a really good mood all of a sudden. All right, sweet. Anyway,
love it.
love it. Love it. 10 stars. Better. No, no. I was gonna say better than Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay. Nothing. No.
Let me ask you the question that all the people have on their minds right now. Going forward with your Dunkin' Donuts orders, will this drink now become the priority over the regularly ordered cold brew?
That is a great question. I am gonna have to say no.
The sugar.
Probably, and also this might be a limited time menu item. I don't know.
It probably will be. Yeah.
No, yeah, knowing my luck, something I actually really like.
I'm glad you like it. Oh,
But now that we got that out of the way, damn, that's really good. I really recommend you try this on.
not sponsored. Not
Not sponsored, not which I actually forgot to say that last episode. So we're making up for it this episode. But that is enough of an intro. Please try the S'mores Cold Brew. This is episode 64, Nintendo 64, episode of Pucks and Brews. And we got a lot for you this episode. We got the draft, got a bunch of trades. We got a whole crap ton of signings. As always, we have our winners and losers. And last but not least, I believe you and I both have a mini rant to go on at the end.
yeah.
All right.
I'll have some opinions to share.
Oh, as will I. And probably not the opinions you'd think. I don't know. I'm just saying shit to stir shit up. Anyway, let's do this, shall we?
Let's do it.
So, of course, as we were finishing last episode, and you know, as our luck goes, what happens? There's a trade involving the Detroit Red Wings sending Jake Wallman to the San Jose Sharks, in which they literally gave up a second round pick to the Sharks just to take on Jake Wallman's contract in exchange for, drum roll please, future considerations. Rest in peace. May we have a moment of silence for the future Hall of Famer. Dude, this future considerations guy, I mean, he's like vacant in wrestling.
Absolutely.
There's no other way to put it. Fucking like 20-time Hall of Famer. Just every team, man. Every team. Journeyman.
He's the ultimate journeyman. Took the words right out of my mouth.
Ultimate journeyman indeed. But yeah, San Jose, that was the beginning of their weekend, in which by the end of it, they actually did make a couple good moves, I must say. But we're gonna stick with the trades here. That was the first one that really kicked off draft weekend. But going to the June 27th, Andrew Mangiapane is acquired by the Washington Capitals in exchange for a 2025 second round pick for the Calgary Flames. And this kickstarted a good series of moves by the Washington Capitals, in my opinion. I mean, Mangiapane, not what he used to be, obviously, because Calgary just the entire organization went to hell there for a while. It looks like they're rebounding a little bit, but I like this pickup for Washington and type of as a type of change of scenery type trade.
3 seasons ago, with the Calgary Flames, Andrew Mangiapane scored 35 goals in the regular season. And since then, he's definitely tapered off, like you mentioned. But for Washington, again, like we talked about with the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, they're in a position where they just want to add. And again, I'll go back to the point that I mentioned last episode or the episode previous. During that playoff series in the first round against our beloved New York Rangers, it was clearly evident that Washington just did not have serviceable NHL talent on their roster. There were tons of call-ups coming from the American Hockey League with the Hershey Bears, who of course go on to win their second of back-to-back Calder Cups. Congratulations to them, as we touched on last episode. So of course, great prospects, but again, in a playoff series, you need legitimate NHL experience. And with these two moves, first two moves that we've discussed, at least coming from the Capitals, they acquire two players who have extensive NHL experience. And again, I think like Pierre-Luc Dubois, maybe in not terms of the character, but perhaps in terms of the production and the contract, maybe Washington is hoping that a change of scenery will help Mangiapane get his game back.
Yeah, and I hope he does because I actually really enjoyed watching him in his peak in Calgary. He was a very fun player to watch.
Sixth round pick and has made quite the career for himself. Just real quick on the Jake Wallman trade, I just want to touch on that as well. He had an average annual value, I believe, of 3.3 to $3.8 million per year. I think it was closer to 3.3. But
3.4, I think.
3.4, and he was a
Yeah,
23-point defenseman last season. I think a lot of NHL fans really remember him for his gritty celebration during the shootout. But again, for San Jose, I just think they're continuing to add, just like Washington is. But I will say this, it's a little bit perplexing to see a player with a $3.4 million cap hit get traded and have to get traded alongside a second round pick. I thought, I thought that was a little surprising when I first heard the news. So
yeah. But moving on to the next notable trade, uh, at least for me, because this is a player that, was a highly touted prospect at one point. Alexander Texier goes from the Columbus Blue Jackets to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for a 2025 fourth round pick. Uh, Hey, he had a good start to Columbus, and then everything kind of just went to hell there also. But I like this as a depth pickup for the Blues.
I've always been a huge fan of Alexander Texier. He's got a good game, plays down the middle. Again, doesn't have that overwhelming size that some teams are looking for out of the center position. And I think we'll talk about a trade involving the St. Louis Blues in just a moment here. Obviously, a need to add down the middle, and they do so, bringing in a player that could provide some much needed upside. So again, 30 points in 78 games last year. That was a career high. See if you can build on it.
Yep, and that was kind of the first notable trade, or really, I should say, the only notable trade that happened during night one of the NHL draft, because I was at work and I remember you texting me about outside of a couple draft picks being moved, there's not a whole lot of action.
Yeah, I thought the draft was good. I thought there were a few surprises. Of course, Macklin Celebrini goes number one overall to the San Jose Sharks. I mean, he was third in the entire NCAA in points as a freshman last year at
Pretty
BU.
good.
So, definitely a worthwhile number one pick. And again, like you mentioned, I think with San Jose, they're continuing to add. I think they're going to be much, much better than they were last year. Celebrini is going to be a big part of that. And the other pick that really surprised me, just two, and they're actually back to back. The first is the Columbus Blue Jackets. They draft Caden Lindstrom. Apparently, there were a ton of conversations about potentially trading that pick, but Columbus stood strong. I believe it was reported that Chicago offered up their unprotected first round pick next year to get this pick from the Blue Jackets. But again, they stand strong. They draft Caden Lindstrom, who's one of the best two-way players in the draft. And then the biggest surprise for me, Ivan Demidov gets drafted by the Montreal Canadiens at the next pick, number 5. He was ranked number 2 by most pre-draft scouting lists. and he is going to be fantastic, alongside that young group of forwards that Montreal is starting to build now. Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, and now you add Demidov to the mix, Yurov Slavkovsky as well, who they just extended. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's a home run pick. The fact that at number 5 Montreal gets this player is amazing. So that was the highlights of the first round. Not much past that.
Yeah, my friend Joey, who's an Islanders fan, he was basically calling this one of the steals of the draft already at pick number 5.
Demidov.
Be-
Yeah.
yeah, because Chicago seemingly went off the board again, like they did in the Kirby Doc draft. And then we got the reaction of the first round with Bennett Seneca going 3rd overall to Anaheim, which was pretty funny. Then the next cool little nugget after Demidov was Jerome McGinley's son, Ty McGinley, being the first ever draft pick in the Utah Hockey Club history.
Yeah, I bet Calgary wasn't too happy with that, who was drafting at 9. I bet they were furiously trying to trade up for that pick with an opportunity to take Ginla. But again, the Utah Hockey Club, you talk about a team that's really building quite the roster. They get a player that could be one of the steals of the draft. So I'm with you.
Yeah, and uh just because it's worth mentioning, my buddy, who is the same friend I just mentioned, Joey, he also was ecstatic when Cole Iserman fell to 20 and the Islanders picked him because I believe he set the new record for goals in a season or most goals overall while playing for the United States National Team Development Program. So he was beyond ecstatic. I can't really put into words just how happy he was. So Islanders look like they got a good pick there.
He fell from where he was expected to be. Definitely for number 20 to come along and the Islanders to acquire this player. I mean, he has a right to be as happy as he was. Quick note on Yzerman, 58 goals in 57 games this past season. And he's the program's all-time leader with 127 goals in 119 games. So again, there could be some outside factors that led teams to believe that he should have fallen in the draft, like your skating. But as far as his shot and his goal scoring, there's nobody better in the draft outside of Celebrini. But Celebrini's more of a playmaker himself, so Yzerman could very well be a 30-40 goal guy. Or he could be like Oliver Wahlstrom, because, again, many Islander fans were talking the same way when Wahlstrom was picked up several years back. But good pick. I like it.
And the last draft prospect we're going to talk about for the first round is the Rangers' first round pick at number 30 overall, defenseman EJ Emery. And as soon as I saw the scouting report on this kid, I'm like, this is exactly what we needed. This is
Yep.
a big stay-at-home defenseman. And I'm
He,
really like this pick.
He's committed to the University of North Dakota for this upcoming season. And again, what a program to develop this player before he enters the professional ranks. I thought it was a great pick. He looks up to Keandre Miller. That was his comparison. I know you might be a little bit upset with Keandre Miller at the moment due to his playoff performance. But again, if he could become a top 4 D-man like Keandre has been for the Rangers, it's a home run of a pick at number 30. Got to be happy with that.
Hey, a couple of years back, they traded up to number 21, I believe, to trade Braden Schneider.
Yep.
And look at how that's working out. That's working out pretty darn well right now.
And also of note, they were saying on the draft during the coverage that Toronto was expected to take EJ Emery at the next pick and that they really wanted him, and the Rangers stepped up and got their guy. So I love it.
Hey, remember, we were talking last week, and what did I say the Rangers needed in the system? We need a high-end defenseman. Call me Nostradamus.
Love it. And just one more draft pick I just want to talk about in terms of the first round. Number 12, the Minnesota Wild. They make, at the time, what seemed to be a relatively insignificant trade. They move up from 13 to 12 in a trade with the Philadelphia Flyers. They acquire Zeev Buium, who's a defenseman out of Denver. He was expected to go number 4 overall. He was unbelievable last year. So Minnesota could have very well gotten a steal at number 12, but I think we definitely covered all the notable names in the first round, but hoping that there could be, quite a bit of talent that makes an impact at the NHL levels from pick number 1 to pick number 32.
Yeah, this is looking like a pretty darn good draft class. It's gonna be fun to watch them all, develop and watch their hockey journey grow through to the NHL. So
Definitely.
yeah, and let's hope the Rangers hit a home run with this pick. That's
Hope
really
so.
all I,
Fingers
all,
crossed. Fingers
yeah,
crossed.
fingers crossed. All I have left to say. Now going back to the trades that were happening on night two, June 29th, 28th was night one. The first one, and well, I should say really the first two, at least in order on Cap Friendly. The Utah Hockey Club making some fucking moves. First off, acquiring from the Tampa Bay Lightning Mikhail Sergachev in exchange for the signing rights to JJ Moser, Connor Geeky, and a 2024 seventh round pick and a 2025 second round pick. This I love this deal for Utah.
This is a blockbuster. You're getting a top four defenseman on a legitimate Stanley Cup contender every single year
Yep.
in Sergachev. He's a two-time Stanley Cup champion with the Lightning. Had a little bit of a down year last year, but of course we remember when Sergachev's season definitely came to a halt. But again, he has been one of their top guys during their entire run. So the fact that Utah has this open cap space, realized that they could, I wouldn't say take advantage of a team like Tampa Bay, but I guess I'll say that, right? Who needed the cap space at the time, was trying to re-sign Steven Stamkos and Victor Hedman both. And again, they get a legitimate top four defenseman, something that, going back to the Coyotes, they never really had, in exchange for not giving up too much control over our assets. I like Geeky. I think he might be a couple of years away. Moser is good as well. He's an underrated defenseman. But again, when you evaluate the value that Mikhail Sergachev had, not only to the Lightning, but all throughout the league, this is a steal of a deal for Utah.
And I said there was two moves. John Marino, they also get from the New Jersey Devils in exchange for a 2024 second and a 2025 second going back to Utah. Or going to Utah is also a 2024 fifth round pick. And literally, they acquire two top four defensemen in the span of 30 minutes.
I've liked Marino even when he was with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I thought that
Same.
was a great deal for New Jersey. And I don't know about you, Shades, but I was a little bit surprised when reports came out after the Stanley Cup was awarded that this was a player that was expected to be traded. I mean, not the greatest season last year, but again, I think this is a real good move for Utah. You don't give up too much, and again, New Jersey wanted to clear that salary cap space, and now we know why.
Exactly. But Utah making moves right off the bat. You love to see it.
They're going to be much, much better next year.
Oh,
Much.
yeah. And now they have a defense core that has John Marino, Mikhail Sergachev, and Sean Durzi. That's not bad.
And Yuso Valimaki as well, who had a breakout season on the back end, great underlying numbers. So when you look at those four guys, that's a core to build around.
Oh, yeah. Much improved defensive core. Next trade we got. This one I just absolutely laughed for two different reasons. Because the Lightning trade away Tanner Jeannot to the Los Angeles Kings, and in exchange, they got back somehow a fourth round pick this year and a second round pick next year. So they traded literally a first, second, third, fourth, and a fifth. And in the end, they get what, 1.5 seasons out of Tanner Jeannot?
Elliot Friedman was talking about how the LA Kings felt like they might have been pushed around at points last year. And again, there are so many teams, especially out west, that value physicality over pretty much anything out of a player, and specifically a third, fourth line guy like Jeannot is. Incredibly disappointing for the Lightning. Perhaps the worst asset management that we've seen out of a significant trade in recent history, if
Yes.
you ask me. But again, he was on a really tough contract. He had 14 points in 55 games last year. So LA is clearly bringing him in not only to be a reclamation project, but to provide that physicality that they were lacking last season.
Yep. And the fact, again, I laughed for two different reasons because in the end, Tampa loses overall a first, third, and a fifth for a guy that, I mean, he shouldn't have even been that much to begin with, but that's bad asset management there, like you said. And Jeannot goes to the Kings, where I still don't understand how the Kings give up a second and a fourth for a guy that really is coming off of two bad seasons. But
I guess they look at that year where he put up 41 points in 81 games, right, with Nashville.
that was his rookie season.
2022. and they think that he can build on that again, right? He's just 27 years old. Maybe you are what you are. Maybe there's room to improve. Former ECHLer too, so cool to see former Florida Everblade make it to the NHL. So, but yeah, again, all I can say is there's a ton of value behind players who play the way that Tanner Jeannot plays. That's the reason I give you for why LA gave up a second round pick. I don't necessarily agree with it, but again, clearly they saw a lot in him.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they did. But
And
oof.
good on Tampa, I guess. I mean, you recoup a second. I mean, that's pretty
And a
nice.
fourth.
And a fourth. So again, not ideal, but
Still a net loss of a first, third, and fifth for a
inch.
guy that did next to nothing for you.
Yeah,
No bueno.
not a good trade. Not a good trade at all.
No. And I also regret wasting a keeper pick on Jeannot after his rookie year, but nonetheless, moving on. Next up, Pittsburgh Penguins acquire Kevin Hayes and a second round pick from the St. Louis Blues in exchange for the aforementioned future Hall of Famer, future considerations. And Blues really were looking to get rid of him, weren't they?
Yeah, he's on certainly a tough contract, right? Going back to the one that he signed with the with the Winnipeg Jets first. Well, no, he got traded to the Jets, then signed the contract with the Flyers. And Philadelphia wanted out of that. And again, after one season, St. Louis is already moving on from him. I mean, I'll always love Kevin Hayes. He gets traded to the Penguins, and perhaps this is David Quinn, new assistant coach of the Penguins, saying, you know what, Hayes, played well under me, and maybe again we could see a little bit of a better season out of him. But again, 29 points in 79 games. Of course, the unfortunate and tragic loss of his brother definitely has to have some sort of impact, on his mental state. And again, I really hope he has a lot of success in Pittsburgh. I'll never forget his overtime goal in Pittsburgh in the playoffs. That was a fun one.
Yeah, that was pretty good, wasn't it? Yeah, and that is currently a contract that was under 50% cap retention when he got traded to the Blues. So the Penguins get Hayes at just under 3.6 million. Moving on, the Washington Capitals acquire goaltender Logan Thompson. This trade shocked me. In exchange from the Vegas Golden Knights, they get a 2024 third round pick and a 2025 third round pick. So a pair of third round picks for a guy that, let's be honest here, can be a starter.
Yeah, the best ability is availability for Logan Thompson. And again, he's really had that, right? 37 games started, 46 games started, when you're going through the last two seasons. He's been really good. And again, I don't really understand this from Vegas, especially with what their moves looked like afterward. In terms of Washington, again, we texted back and forth about it, right? I thought that Charlie Lindgren was the number one. I see it a little bit of a different way. I don't see Thompson coming in and being that number one guy. I see Washington seeing an opportunity to acquire a goaltender that gives them a legitimate chance to win every single night, no matter who's in net. And I think there's value to that. But again, I think Vegas definitely undervalued Thompson. And you know what? I can tell you why, because it's just coming back to me. Logan Thompson actually requested a trade out of Vegas. So that's why they probably weren't able to get as much as people thought. A little bit surprising to see him request to get traded out of Vegas. But again, Aiden Hill has kind of taken over that net. So a lot of
And
moving parts here with this deal.
yeah, and deservedly so, because Aiden Hill backstopped them to a Stanley Cup. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that'll do it for you.
But
And
again, 3 full seasons with Vegas, just real quick. 2.68 goals against average, 2.65 goals against average, 2.70 goals against average. So Hill might have taken over the net and won them the Stanley Cup, but he's been remarkably consistent and quite frankly, one of the best goaltenders in the league when you're looking at consistency over the last few years. Thompson's on top of that list. Can he keep it going in Washington? I think that's something that Vegas was probably skeptical of moving forward. And again, he gets a fresh start. Good for him.
yep, hope it works out. And Vegas was actually in the news again shortly thereafter
Mhm.
because they made a trade with the Devils where the Golden Knights got Akira Schmid and Alexander Holtz in exchange. The Devils got Paul Cotter and a 2025 third. And well, Devils, they finally found their trading partner to get rid of Holtz because I know they were trying to get rid of him for a little while now.
Yeah, there have been rumors surrounding Alexander Holtz almost since his draft night. Again, I know Devils fans really wanted to see him get an opportunity. I think Lindy Ruff getting fired, I think the way that he handled Holtz had a really big impact on that decision coming from the upper management of the Devils. But again, even after Lindy Ruff was no longer coach of the Devils, Holtz still didn't pick it up. I, for one, am a huge fan of Paul Cotter. So I look at this trade for the Devils. I think this is a win.
Yeah.
This is a win for New Jersey.
Yeah, and I mean we're gonna get back to them, throughout the episode, but
A lot of wins for New Jersey. But
yeah,
again, Vegas is banking on upside here with
yeah,
Holtz. And again, he has an opportunity to play with great players. And now, again, and we'll talk about later, but they're missing one of their top line wings. Maybe that gives an opportunity for a young guy like Holtz to seize the chance. So I'm not closing the book on him yet.
yeah. And Vegas's GM did come out with a quote the other day. We won the Stanley Cup because we had a bunch of guys outperform their contract. And like looking back, it's kind of true.
It's well
Very
said.
true, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, they're hoping to recapture some of that same magic from 2 years ago. Or last year, sorry, last year. 2 years ago it was Colorado. And the last trade specifically on night two of the NHL draft, the Toronto Maple Leafs acquire Chris Tanev from the Dallas Stars in exchange for the signing rights to Max Ellis and a 2026 seventh round pick. I personally love this pickup for the Maple Leafs because he is exactly the type of guy that they needed on their back end. We'll get back to the contract in a few minutes, but
Yeah.
just from a player standpoint, this is the type of player that they needed to pick up for their defense.
Absolutely. And again, we'll talk about the contract because that's definitely a big part of this discussion. But like you said, Toronto acquiring the rights to Chris Tanev, who is expected or to become an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. And again, when you really look at defensemen in terms of defensive value, especially during the playoffs, I don't know if there was a player on the back end that was more valuable than Chris Tanev was to the Dallas Stars. Awesome pickup. I agree with you.
Yeah, no, really, really good pickup. The Tampa Bay Lightning, obviously, at the start of the next day, had to steal the headlines right off the bat, at least in terms of trades.
Mhm.
They acquire Jake Gensel from the Carolina Hurricanes a day before free agency. The Hurricanes get a 2025 third round pick so Tampa could talk to Gensel a day early. And, we'll get back to the contract in a second when we get to that part of the episode. But this is a great pickup from Tampa. I can't even get mad at this. They gave up a third round pick just so they could secure their guy.
This is as intriguing of a situation that I think we've seen in the NHL all offseason.
Oh
I
yeah.
could go on for a while about it, but in short, I don't think Gensel ever had any interest in re-signing in Carolina.
No,
I
he threw a number out there.
that he didn't think
Carolina,
they were on a match. He didn't
and
think so.
then they matched almost immediately. And
They're
he
like,
was
yeah,
just
you want
like, okay, let
eight
me
by
think
eight?
about this.
Yeah, they're like, you want 8 by 8? Sure, absolutely. And then, the rumblings started to come up that Gensel might have been interested in the Lightning. And, of course, with the taxes down there in Florida, of course, that's an intriguing landing spot for any unrestricted free agent. And I think Carolina really saw the writing on the wall here. But that's got to be some turnaround after you have Gensel make his ask, you meet his ask, and then suddenly you find out that, even if you give him the contract he wants, he's not going to stay. And for Tampa, they get that exclusive signing rights period to talk to Gensel a little bit early, like you mentioned. And hey, it was, again, we'll talk about the contract later, but I'd say it was definitely worth a third round pick.
Yeah, we're gonna have very strong opinions on both teams in the next couple minutes. But moving on to the next trade, the Washington Capitals get Jacob Chikrin from the Ottawa Senators in exchange for Nick Jensen and a 2026 third round pick. Again, Chikrin, highly touted defenseman at one point in time, never really lived up to the hype in Arizona, and then goes to Ottawa, and his value just continues to drop. I still think he has a role as an NHL defenseman for sure, and I think a change in scenery again could benefit him well, especially if you're going to go to a team that has a guy like Alexander Ovechkin. But yeah, I kind of like this trade for both teams. I got to be honest.
I'm going to throw out a little stat for you. Eric Brandstrom, who played on the back end alongside Jacob Chikrin, who again is an unrestricted free agent and has since signed elsewhere. He was a +5 last year in 76 games for Ottawa. Do you know what the plus minus was for Jacob Chikrin last year with Ottawa? You want to take a guess? He played 82 games, all 82,
Minus 22.
-30. So you talk about a player that has completely fallen off a cliff. He wanted out of Arizona. He gets his trade to Ottawa, and he's really struggled the last 2 seasons. But again, like we keep talking about, Washington striking while the iron is hot, and they bring in, a defenseman in Jacob Chikrin, who again could have a turnaround season. So again, I see this with all three players: Mangiapane, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Jacob Chikrin. The Washington Capitals are all about reclamation projects this offseason.
Yep, 100%. How many of them are going to work out? Time will tell.
We'll see.
Yep. And we had the Anaheim Ducks acquiring defenseman Brian Dumoulin from the Seattle Kraken in exchange for a 2026 fourth-round pick. I mean, that's a decent pickup for Anaheim. Dumoulin was a very good defenseman on Pittsburgh.
Really fast with Anaheim. That was the first move they had made all offseason. Like significant they had made all offseason. Trying to reach the cap. One trade that just came out.
Yeah, that was yeah. I mean, solid pickup for them. And now may we just give another moment of silence because future Hall of Famer, future considerations was involved in 2 more trades on the second day of free agency, July 2nd. And Liam, you may have noticed that I skipped a trade, and that was because it was the last one we're about to talk about involving our beloved love-hate relationship with the New York Rangers, but they acquire forward Riley Smith from the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is that in itself was mind-blowing that we actually made a trade with them in exchange for a 2027 second-round pick and a 2025 conditional fifth-round pick. The condition being Pittsburgh will receive the lower of the 2 fifth-round draft picks that the Rangers own, because we also had Minnesota's, and I do not remember what trade that is from, but that is a moot point. I will say this, with Riley Smith's cap hit being 25% retained, us getting him at 3.75 million in a vacuum, like the player. Drury loves trading second round picks plus for third liners, but I think what they're trying to go for here is maybe stick them on that top line with Mika and Kreider, maybe.
Yeah, that's how I see it. And this trade came about because once unrestricted free agency began, many of the targets that the Rangers were looking at, they all fell off the board. And Drury realized that again during this unrestricted free agency period, the cap is going up, and the cap did go up, just a few weeks ago, and next year it's going up even more. And again, we'll talk about it, but these contracts are absolutely crazy. So I think it's good on Drury for not panicking, signing a bad contract and kind of locking yourself in when you have other more important players to pay, like Keandre Miller, Alexi Lafreniere, Braden Schneider, Ryan Lindgren, and Igor Shesterkin, to be specific. And again, a second round pick and a fifth round pick, it's the price you pay for dealing with a rival and a team within your own division. But again, Riley Smith won a Stanley Cup with the Vegas Golden Knights 2 years ago. He had 14 points in 22 games. He was playing in their top 6. And again, you talk about guys overperforming their contracts. Riley Smith was one of them for Vegas. He really struggled when he got to Pittsburgh. But again, when it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. And I would not, fault you for saying, really, it's not the right fit. How can you not get your game going playing with Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby? Fine. That's fair. But at the end of the day, Riley Smith is a Stanley Cup champion 2 years ago. He's a very smart two-way player. Brendan Smith worked out really well with the Rangers. I know we just throwing that out there too. Obviously, Riley, the better of the brothers. Again, a forward and a defenseman, kind of hard to compare. But for Drury to go and pick up this player, I think it's a win. I think it's a win, and I think that he is going to play on the first line with Kreider and Zibanejad. Does it work? I can't tell you, but is it worth the risk? I'd say so. Better than going and panicking and signing a winger to a 5-year deal where he's vastly overpaid. Again, Riley Smith is on a 1-year deal this season. You're not locked in. So I'm a fan of it. And I believe there was some salary retention too on Pittsburgh's side. Was there? Or
25%. So Rangers get him at 3.75 million.
You pay the fifth round pick to get the retention. But again, worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I hope this works out. I
If
really do.
Riley Smith was a free agent and Drury signed him to a 1 year, $3.75 million deal, how would you feel about it?
I would like that.
Exactly. So that's kind of how I view it. You give up a pick, but again, you had an extra second round pick to deal with. Like you said, and they get the worst of the Minnesota pick. Or they get the worst of the 2 second round draft picks that the Rangers have, one getting acquired from Minnesota. So it's not an ideal way to start the offseason for our beloved New York Rangers, but I feel like if this was the move to be made for now, while the rest of our cap situation is figured out, I'm content.
At the moment, yeah. I mean, I will have thoughts later, but like I said, in a vacuum, you're getting a solid third line player at worst.
At
So
worst.
at worst. So not terrible. Now we move on to the free agent signings, and obviously there's a couple we got to hit on, re-signings prior to unrestricted free agency actually happening. Dylan DeMello re-signs with the Winnipeg Jets on a 4-year deal worth $4.9 million a year. That's a solid retention by them. He's been really solid for them.
Yep, agreed.
Casey Middlestat with the Colorado Avalanche, a 3-year deal, 5.75 a year. That was a guy that definitely benefited from a change of scenery mid-season, and Colorado has their second line center for the next 3 seasons. So I like that contract for both the team and the player there.
Yeah, we touched on that last episode, but yeah, definitely a good contract for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have more to talk about with the Avalanche later, but I
Yep.
feel like we're going to be saying that a lot this episode. Dakota Joshua with Vancouver, 4-year deal worth 3.25. He had coming off a good season for them, so wanted to keep one of their guys. Not too bad. They also re-signed Tyler Myers, 3-year deal worth 3 million. He's 34, but still has some gas left in the tank.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Tyler Myers. Again, that was a contract that I think many fans thought that Vancouver was going to want to get out of. And the fact that after it ends, they extend him for 3 more years. I like it.
Yeah, we mentioned Alexander Texier before, 2-year deal worth 2.1 million for the St. Louis Blues. I actually decent depth move by them,
Upside contract. Yep.
100%. Calvin Pickard to the Edmonton Oilers, 2 years, 1 million apiece. That's going to be their backup. Not a bad signing at all. Uh,
Pickard coming in during the playoffs in that one game after Stuart Skinner struggled, and he went in and won that game. And again, Edmonton played really well in the playoffs after that. So he had a significant impact as a backup.
oh yeah,
That
no,
signing.
good signing by them. Sean Dursey re-ups with the Utah Hockey Club, 4 years, 6 million, and we talked about the defense for this team before, and I might as well include Juuso Valimaki while I'm at it too. 2 years worth $2 million a year. I mean, the two very good signings by them. This is going to be. They've had a hell of an offseason so far.
I'm a little bit interested by the 6 million a year over 4 years for Dursey. I think he's been good, but I think that's pretty high. But they got Valimaki in on a steal. 2 years, 2 million, great deal. Like I said, I love Valimaki. So their decor has turned suddenly overnight, right?
Oh yeah.
From one of the worst to one of the best with great depth.
Hey, and you said it literally a couple minutes ago. The cap is only going to go up.
Yep, 100%.
On to Patrick Kane, re-signing a 1-year deal with the Detroit Red Wings for did I get that wrong? No, $6.5 million. I mean, he was looking for term, didn't get it, but with the way he came in mid-season with Detroit last year, re-signing him for 6 million when he's actually healthy, I either they're going to dangle him at the deadline or they're going to make a playoff run. But I like that contract for both the player and the team.
I personally think it's going to be the latter, meaning that they'll go on a playoff run. They just missed out last year. But like I said, Kaner had one of the best years in recent memory with Detroit last season. Is 6.5 million a lot? Yeah, but is Patrick Kane a first line player that worked really well with the Red Wings last year? Also, yes. And one more note, another 1 year deal gives Kane an opportunity to get, that perhaps that one last contract of, 3 or 4 years, before his career comes to an end. This upcoming offseason, cap's only going up, maybe interest will be raised around him if he continues to perform.
Yeah, he currently is 35. going to somebody who's 10 years younger than him, Timothy Liljegren, re-signing 2 years worth $3 million a year with Toronto. Uh, you know, he had a lot of hype around him because, it's a Maple Leafs and it's the Maple Leafs and it's a
It's
defenseman that was drafted in the first round, but I don't think he's lived up to expectations.
Yeah, again, I was a little bit perplexed by the re-signing for Toronto. I thought they might have been a little bit inclined to move on from the player. But again, decent enough cap hit, decent enough term. So I don't think it'll be too harmful on the player or team.
No, I mean they had to choose between him and Sandin, and they moved Sandin, so they chose the bed that they lied in.
Agreed. Well said.
Onto the Maple Leafs still. Max Domi, 4 years, 3.75 million. I actually really like how he played with them last year. I like this a lot.
Yeah, he posted the Wolf of Wall Street gif. I'm not leaving. I'm
I'm,
not leaving.
I'm not fucking leaving.
All over X and Twitter. What a way to announce that you are re-signing. Yeah, again, that's a deal I really like.
Yeah. Hey, good on them. I mean, he's another type of player that team needed. So,
Yeah, and he played well. Again, one of the better years that he's had in recent memory. Again, a tumultuous career path
yeah.
up to this point. And now, in a way, he finds a home. It's good.
Oh, yeah. On to the Stanley Cup champions. Sam Reinhart re-ups with the Florida Panthers. 8 years, $8.625 million per year for a grand total of a very nice $69 million contract. Hey, he coming off a season in which he literally had 60 something goals, including the playoffs. I mean, he earned that contract. No other way to say it.
A career year, 57 goals during the regular season. Just outstanding. Nearly a 100-point player. When it came to the playoffs, it did not drop off for him. Again, had that overtime winner in game 4 against the Rangers that, again, really kept Florida in that series, at least statistically at that point. Yeah, he was really good. He was really good. I think it's a little bit high, but again, I think Florida could not afford, after winning the Stanley Cup, not to re-sign this player. But I'm very interested to see what his totals look like next year. Because
Oh
if he
yeah.
puts up close to 57 goals, this contract turns into a one that looks a little bit interesting to one that looks like a value contract. And again, with the cap only going up, not a bad thing.
That is why we saw so much money get thrown around yesterday, because it is going to go back up again next year and fairly,
I,
decent hike.
I do have one question for you on the Sam Reinhart deal. Do
Hit
you
me.
think that the total amount of money being $69 million was deliberate? Think they were just trying to let's just make it 69 million, eh?
I would say this: if you ever get a contract offered 69 million, you say yes, no ifs, ands, or buts.
Absolutely. Well said.
That was too easy.
It was.
And on to, at least in terms of the order on cap friendly, the last contract signed before unrestricted free agency. We mentioned him a couple minutes back. Jake Gensel signs with the Tampa Bay Lightning, 7 years, $9 million a year. They literally got their Stamkos replacement.
Yes, they did. And man, oh man, that first line, presumably, of Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, and Jake Gensel.
Woo.
That's a problem for the Eastern Conference. That's not a problem for the Eastern Conference. That's a problem for the entire league.
Oh
And
yeah,
we talked against the situation. How many years again? One more time? 8?
7.
It's a long contract. That's all I'm going to say. Tampa, is their Stanley Cup window further away than it is close? And does Gensel for Stamkos get you closer? I think that answer remains to be seen. But he played really well with Carolina, 25 points in 17 games after the trade.
Yeah,
I mean, again, all of that talk that perhaps Gensel wouldn't be the same player not playing next to Sidney Crosby went completely out the window. That was a defensive-minded Carolina Hurricanes group that did not score a lot of goals. And Jake Gensel was more than, close to 2 points per game player, a little bit more than a point per game. So this is one I'll keep an eye on. But yeah, again, we'll talk on Stamkos in a minute. So yeah,
yeah. I mean, this was the free agent signing of the offseason, in my opinion.
I was just, again, we'll go into Stamkos in just a second. I was very surprised I really thought that after Sergachev was traded and they were moving around that cap, no thought in my mind went to, oh, they want to sign Jake Gensel. Julian Breezeball just went into a different direction. But I'm not going to fault him for the player. Gensel's awesome, and I hope he continues his great career with the Lightning.
Yep, and that concludes our pre-free agency contract signings. But now we go on to unrestricted free agency, the actual unrestricted free agency. And we start off, at least on Cap Friendly, with Tyler Bertuzzi going to the Chicago Blackhawks on a 4-year deal worth $5.5 million. I mean, I like Bertuzzi as a player. He's 29 years old, plays a hard-nosed game, can score. Had that great year in Detroit, then kind of fell off before getting traded to Toronto. But I'm Chicago needs good players, and he's one of them.
He had a decent season in Toronto this past year. Again, 4 points in 7 playoff games. And the talk from Chicago, going back to their exit meetings, I remember them, because I watched them. I was interested in them. And again, all of the talk was, we got to improve. We got to take that next step. It's time, to surround legitimate surround a legitimate talent around Connor Bedard. And I think that's what this offseason looks like. And again, the Bertuzzi contract, is that high to me? Yes. But again, he's getting paid after what was his best season in 3 years.
Yeah.
Where he put up 62 points in 68 games. So it's in there. So.
Yep. Next up, the New York Rangers signed forward Sam Carrick, 3-year deal worth $1 million a season. I literally looked at this and went, this is their Goodrow replacement.
Yep, simple. Again, Carrick didn't play all the playoff games with the Oilers last year, but again, Chris Drury spoke very highly of him, in his media appearance after day one of unrestricted free agency. And again, 3 years at $1 million, it's fine.
He also spoke very highly of Trouba and Goodrow, and one of them is no longer on the team, and one of them is in a situation we'll get back to later when we're getting towards the end of the episode. But moving on to
he's good, physical, forechecker, wins faceoffs. It's what you need.
Yeah, speaking of Oilers, they re-signed Connor Brown 1 year, $1 million after he had a bounce back playoffs, because I think he only had 2 goals in the regular season.
Awful goal, awful season.
Yeah.
But again, playoff games are the most important, and he showed up.
Yep, and at 1 year, $1 million, I mean, you're not killing the team at all.
Not one bit. Thought the Oilers had a really good offseason. That was the start. So
Yeah. On to the Maple Leafs. Joseph Woll re-signing $3.66 million for 3 years. Hey, I mean, he earned a 3-year deal in that price range with the way he played this past season, and they are hoping that he can turn into either a starter or a 50-50 guy that will give you quality play.
What was the number 1 guy in Toronto? And again, I think he earned that distinction during that playoff series against the Boston Bruins. Again, I think if he doesn't get injured in Game 6, I think there's a pretty good chance that he leads Toronto to a Game 7 victory in that series. So I like it. They give him 3 years to take the starter role and run with it.
Yep, absolutely. Will he, though? That's the question.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he does.
Yeah. Hey, let's hope they can, let's hope they can fix their problems. We'll see. We'll see. Notable defenseman Erik Johnson signs with the Flyers, 1 year, $1 million. I mean, Stanley Cup champion, veteran experience. Philly's in a bad spot, so I mean, they're hoping he can be a veteran leader on that team.
And if they're not competing by the trade deadline, I think that there's a team that would be willing to give up, perhaps a 5th, 6th round draft pick to get Johnson, who again is a Stanley Cup winner and has proven that he's been a stable defenseman in this league for years. So
Absolutely.
1 year, no risk.
Yeah, absolutely. This guy's had a fall from grace from where his peak was a couple years back on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Kasperi Kapanen, 1 year, $1 million with the St. Louis Blues. I can literally probably say the same exact thing that we just said about Erik Johnson.
Yeah, Kapanen returning to the St. Louis Blues
Yep.
For a 3rd season. Yeah, speedy winger is what he is. And again, St. Louis can afford to bring in more forwards and kind of continue to throw things at the wall and see what sticks.
Yep, on to the Carolina Hurricanes and Jordan Martinook. 3 years, 3,050,000. Uh, you know, Justin, how big of a Hurricanes fan he is. He liked that they kept Martinook. He was not exactly a fan of the contract because he said, as much as a heart and soul guy he is for that team, he's not a guy you should be giving $3 million to.
It's pretty similar to the Goudreau contract, if you ask me. Of course, the Rangers signed Goudreau for 6 years, and this is a 3-year deal.
and
But
and 550,000 more a year.
I see, right. I see what Justin is saying about Martinook and in terms of the money. But again, I think he brings intangibles to his game that every champion needs.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll run through a brick wall to win you a hockey game, and sometimes you got to pay for that.
Oh yeah. Moving on to a couple heavy hitters. First and foremost, this was the start of a great day for the Nashville Predators. Jonathan Marchessault, 5-year deal worth $5.5 million a year. I absolutely love this contract for both the player and the team because it felt like he was taking a little bit less money because I feel like he could have gotten more to a young, hungry, up and coming team in the Predators. And I mean, hey, Stanley Cup champion, proven playoff guy, solid during the regular season, just fantastic overall pickup.
I disagree with you.
Interesting. Hit me.
He is 33 years old. That contract takes him through his age 38 season at $5.5 million. Better hope it works. Better hope he's able to continue what he's been doing over the last couple of years. I mean, he's been a 60-point guy the last 3 seasons. Before that, a little bit lower in terms of his points per season. But for me, I don't like it for a 33-year-old. And again, the cap's only going to be going up, so there's not a lot of risk in terms of the finances. But in terms of the term, it worries me.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, to me, it's not as bad as the
And I wanted him to be a Ranger. I will admit that straight out.
you did.
If Drury could have gotten him at 2 years, 14 million, I would have paid him 7 million a year to, be again to get him on a shorter term. But for 5 years for a 33-year-old player, there are very few players as they age deeper and deeper into their 30s get better. And Joe Pavelski is probably the only one that can come to the top of my head that played in the NHL last season. Corey Perry, maybe he's been playing well, last few years of his career too. But for Marchessault, I just don't know. I just don't know. This could be a signing that we look back at in 2 years' time and say, "Wow, what was Nashville thinking there?" But again, you strike while the iron is hot, right? They went out and then they were determined to make moves, and they did.
Oh yeah. On to the Blackhawks with Alec Martinez. They get him on a 1-year deal worth $4 million. Depth defenseman, Stanley Cup champion. Again, they need to build a culture around and a locker room around Connor Bedard. And I think at least internally, maybe not on the ice because he's 36 at this point, but I think that helps them do that.
Alec Martinez, again, you talk about a very big piece of the Vegas Golden Knights blue line. That was Alec Martinez. Meant a lot to the team, meant a lot to the fan base. And again, he wants to get paid $4 million for 1 year to go and play for Chicago. Hey, don't be surprised if Vegas probably comes calling Chicago at the trade deadline next year, trying to acquire him back.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't be surprised at all. Anthony Mantha goes to the Calgary Flames, in which they actually had a halfway decent day overall. 1 year, $3.5 million. He is a guy that did not work out in Washington, but I honestly I still like him because he's on the right side of 30. He's 29 right now. For a 1 year prove it contract, I think he's gonna have a decent season for Calgary.
Yeah, again, I like the player, just like you do. Brings a lot of size, has showcased that skill in the past, has had a number of seasons to where he's performed really well. I'm talking more about the team less than the player. I have no idea what the hell Calgary is doing. I I, I just can't figure it out. Like
I
maybe at some point in this episode we look through the moves that they've made this offseason. I mean, I'm confused. I'm really confused.
I feel like we've been saying that about the Flames for the last 3 years.
Yeah, but with this offseason especially, and especially if the rumors are true that they want to trade Kadri, I mean, and they go and sign Lomberg, I don't get it.
Very odd.
Here's
Very
me.
odd.
Here's me, Calgary.
But from going from a team that's confusing you to a team that is building, again, solid blue line and making some pretty darn good moves this offseason. Brett Pesce to the New Jersey Devils, 6 years at $5.5 million. I hate that I like this move. That's really the only way that I can put it.
What was the AAV one more time?
5.5
5.5 over 6 years.
for a very, very solid two-way defenseman that can play both sides and was a underappreciated piece in Carolina, at least around the league.
Again, I think we should put up like a little bit of a scare face, like when I'm making a prediction like this. This one scares me. This one,
Really?
this one scares me. He's only had one season to where he's put up north of 30 points. And that was exactly 32 seasons ago in 22-23. Now, what I'll agree with you on, he's awesome defensively. I
Yeah.
think he's a really good defensive defenseman. And again, 25 assists is nothing, to look away from. That's awesome. He may not be a goal scorer, but he's consistently setting up his teammates. He joins the play at the right times. That's what you want out of a defenseman. $6.5 million scares me.
Five
And
and a
again,
half.
5.5, still 5.5, even at that price. And here's my question to you.
He literally got the Girardi contract.
Yeah. And here's my question to all. $5.5 million for the New Jersey Devils. John Marino puts up the same amount of points per season. He may not be as good defensively as Pesce is, but how much are you improving going from player A to player B? So that's my question. And with that said, I've loved what New Jersey has done this offseason. I really do. But Pesce scares me a little bit. Just a little bit.
Coming from a player that, or going to a player that scares me, Oliver Ekman-Larsson on a 4-year deal with the Toronto Maple Leafs at $3.5 million. This guy was down and out at the end of his time in Arizona. And honestly, I think Florida, while he did play decent, I think they were making him appear a lot better than he actually is, because we saw just how bad it got at the end of his time in Arizona. I don't know. Personally, if I'm a GM in the league, I don't know if I would have signed this contract. This is how literally, like, your thoughts on Pesce and the other guy we just mentioned, Marchessault. This is how I feel about this Ekman-Larsson contract.
And I'm not going to sit here and say I disagree with you, Shades, because I don't. I mean, 4 years. I mean, for a player that, like you said, right, had half a leg out of the NHL at one point after his time with Vancouver. He's really good in Arizona, elite in Arizona. But
For a while. Yeah.
you talk about falling off of a cliff once you get to a new team. And again, maybe in those last couple years in Arizona, like you touched on. I mean, that's what happened to Ekman-Larsson. He had a decent year last year with Florida, not to warrant a 4-year deal. I
Especially not at $3.5 million.
Calgary Flames, what are you doing? Toronto, I'll say the same thing. What are you doing? What are we doing here?
Yeah, they
What are
go
we
from
And again, we'll get to the other defenseman that you signed too. Newsflash, it was a combined 10 years between two players. You talk about locking yourself down. If it does not work, where do you go? I'm
watch
not
out.
gonna curse this episode, but where do you go? This one scares me too. It does.
I wish you would curse this episode. I feel left out, like I'm being left out over here. Yeah,
What the fuck are you doing? What's going on? What's going on?
there we
With
go.
all respect, Toronto, I want you to succeed. I don't want to see you lose every single first round series except 2 years ago. I don't want to see Boston absolutely dominate you. I want to see you do well. I liked your moves with Joseph Woll. That was good. You're solidifying the goaltending position. 4 years. What do you do? What are you doing?
I'm just happy you
But if it works
cursed.
out, I'll be the first to say I was wrong. I
I'll be
want
the
you.
second.
I do. I do. No hate. No hate at all.
Yeah. All right. On to the Chicago Blackhawks. We got 2 more moves to talk about with them, if not more. Like I said, we're going in order if the cap friendly has it, at least on my computer right now. Laurent Brossoit, 2-year deal worth $3.3 million, another Vegas goaltender being on the move. And also Craig Smith, 1 year, $1 million. I mean, I don't hate either one of these moves for Chicago, to be honest. I actually, for locker room purposes, I like them. Smith has been on a bunch of playoff teams. He was on the Predators when they were at their peak. He was on Boston the last few years. Uh, Two good locker room guys trying to build a culture around Connor Bedard again, and I think they're doing a halfway decent job.
I like what Chicago is doing. And again, their mentality this offseason has always been to just get better. And they've improved their team quite a bit, and these two moves add to that.
Yep. Onto a guy that I didn't know was 32. I thought he was like 37 at this point with how long he's seemingly been in the league. Jason Zucker to the Buffalo Sabres, 1 year, $5 million. I don't know. At this point, 5 million is a little rich for me with him specifically because his best years were in Minnesota a while back. But again, he's another good locker room guy that has playoff experience.
And again, right? Jason Zucker signed a 1 year, $5.5 million with the team formerly known as the Arizona Coyotes last offseason, gets traded over to Nashville, plays really well after the deadline. I don't hate it. You got money to spend if you're Buffalo. So
Yeah. Hey, 1 year contracts, only 1 year.
yep,
If things go badly,
no risk.
yep,
Nope.
no long-term risks.
And if you're not competing, you can trade him. Just like
Exactly.
Arizona.
Exactly. Going back to the Utah Hockey Club for a second, Ian Cole on a 1 year deal worth 3.1 million. I was actually kind of surprised he got signed, to be honest. I don't know. This guy, yeah, I mean, we all know what happened, with his time in Carolina and how that came to an end, but that's kind of a fall from grace there. But I don't know how I feel about this one either. I mean, they've got Marino, Sergachev, and lockdown Jersey. I mean, Cole was good, but at 35, a 1 year deal isn't going to kill them, I guess.
Yeah, again, 1 year deal. Ian Cole has been pretty consistent back end defender. Plays the defensive side of the puck. Again, low risk, and provides depth to your blue line. So Utah continues to make pretty good moves.
Speaking of good moves, well, at least in terms of player, Seattle signs Stanley Cup champion Brandon Montour to a 7 year deal worth 7.142857 million. This is a little rich for me, but mainly because he's 30. So this, I mean, don't get me wrong, love the player acquisition, but a 7 year deal for a guy who, let's face it, didn't really get going until he got to the Panthers, kind of like Ekman Larson. Uh, I, like I said, love the player, don't love the term.
Shades, I'm scared again.
Liam scared everybody.
I'm scared again. Again, I've liked Montour for a long time. I really liked him when he was in Anaheim. I thought he had a terrific year with Florida. People forget he had 57 points, 57 assists, excuse me, 73 points 2 seasons ago
In
with the
Anaheim?
no, with Florida.
No, you said Anaheim.
But,
I was hoping you would catch yourself, but I know what you meant.
yeah, of course. So he starts his career with Anaheim coming out of the American Hockey League and then joins Florida for the past 4 seasons. I'm a little bit scared. Again, he's had really good seasons. He's physical. He's a championship winning defenseman, which of course is significant all throughout the league. But yeah, this one scares me. 7 years is a little bit long and a little bit rich. And again, we've seen in recent years how defenseman contracts can flip on a team. Trouba. So, 7 years, you better be sure that you got the right guy. And I hope Montour works out in Seattle because Seattle's building something pretty good. And they clearly want to compete for a playoff spot. So, but down the line here, I don't know how this one's going to be viewed.
Yeah, I mean, 7 years is a lot to sign for a 30-year-old, but hey, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. We'll see. Uh, Teuvo Teravainen up next, going back to the Chicago Blackhawks, 3 year deal worth $5.4 million. 29 years old. I mean, hey, he was an underappreciated member of the Blackhawks team when he was there the first time. And again, Chicago, they're having a pretty good offseason. This just adds to the list of good moves.
You know, when we talk about our beloved New York Rangers and one free agent that I really pinched myself for not signing, it's this guy.
Yep.
It's you talk about a player that could potentially help unlock Capo Caco, a fellow Finn. I might add, of course, he wins a Stanley Cup with Chicago in his, second year as a pro. He only played 3 games in 2013, 2014, 15. He wins a cup with the Blackhawks. He returns to Chicago. I'm really upset that the Rangers didn't get him, but of note, not in terms of this player or the team that he signs with. Shades a lot of people leaving Carolina, a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
players in the Hurricanes.
Oh yeah.
And again, he spent a significant amount of time in Carolina. So again, that's throwing no shade at the Canes, but he moves on to going from a legit championship contender to a team that's, I would say, pretty far away from that, even having, one of the top young players in the game. He's 29 years old. How long was the contract again?
3 years.
3 years. I don't hate it.
No,
I mean, there's
I like it.
stability. So, and again, good for the Blackhawks for getting the guy. I wish the Rangers got him. I'll say it again.
Yeah, and the Blackhawks also added Pat Maroon, 1 year, 1.3 million. This literally screams, I'm signing with you guys to get traded at the deadline and hopefully to play for another contender.
Exactly, but there's value to that. I
Yeah.
mean, on a contender that needs a fourth line grinder, to come in with legit Stanley Cup experience, that's Pat Maroon. And at $1.1 million, especially at the deadline when teams have more money to spend. No brainer.
Oh yeah. The Boston Bruins signed Nikita Zadorov to 6 year deal worth $5 million a year. This one scares me too because Zadorov's been very up and down. I don't know what Boston's was thinking on this one.
Yeah, I'm scared again. I am scared again. Like, of course, 6'6", 250 pounds. There's a lot to like in term of the physical attributes of Nikita Zadorov. But he had 14 points in 54 games last year with the Vancouver Canucks. Maybe recency bias came to the table for Boston.
I
Eight
guess.
in 14 playoff games for Zadorov. You talk about playing yourself into a lucrative contract. That's what Zadorov did. I don't like the term. I don't like the money. And again, Boston's trying to find their next big Z, but I don't know. I don't know how this one's going to work out.
At this point, I'm literally going to put that as the episode name. I'm scared. Worth it. Worth it. Two contract extensions that we need to talk about. Well, technically extensions. Jacob Slavin re-upping with the Carolina Hurricanes, a team where everybody was leaving. 8 years, 6.461 and a quarter million. I can't even hate that contract. They're literally top of their defense core, their number one D man. To lock him up for under 6.5 million. I mean, will it be is this a contract that's going to age well in 5 or 6 years? Maybe not, but I mean, you got to pay your guy. And
Agreed.
I think term lowered the AAV on this one.
Yeah, I think the AAV is fantastic,
Yeah,
and I don't think there should be any trepidation from the Hurricanes to giving Slavin the term that he wanted. And again, like you said, a lot of players leaving Carolina. You have to keep your homegrown guys. You have to keep your guys who enjoy playing in Carolina and being a Hurricane. And Slavin is one of those, again, consistent Norris Trophy candidate. And that's even saying with that, he doesn't put up that many points. He is that good defensively.
oh
Like
yeah,
if I could choose one shutdown defenseman, no hit related to add to my hockey team in the entire league,
yeah,
I am adding Jacob Slavin. So I think again the term is a little bit much, but you have to, like you said, in order to keep your guy.
exactly. And or this might actually be the last of the extensions that we're going to talk about, or at least one of the last. But Igor Sharangovich re-ups with the Calgary Flames, 5 years, 5.75 million. Uh, this is one of those I don't hate it, but I don't love it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I've always liked Sharon Govich in New Jersey. Again, I don't really know what Calgary is doing, but he had a 29-point increase from where he was 2 seasons ago as a Devil to where he was last season as a Flame. So clearly it works in Calgary, and he has an opportunity to get consistent top 6 minutes. So I don't hate the deal. Calgary isn't really going anywhere, but I think you want to lock down this player, definitely, because he had a significant improvement from 1 year to the next.
Yep. Back to the Capitals for a second. Brandon Duhaime, notable trade deadline acquisition from the Avalanche last year, signs with the Capitals 2 years, 1.85 million. I think that's a solid depth add for Washington and what they're trying to do, which I don't know what that is, but they've made some good moves.
They're adding quality NHLers to the roster, and Duhaime is one of those.
Yeah, not much else to say there. Up next, we got Yakov Trenin in Minnesota, 4-year deal worth $3.5 million a year. I actually really liked him on Nashville. Uh, 27 years old, in the prime of his career. Again, I don't know. Minnesota's a team; they're stuck in the middle still, so I just don't know with them.
Scares me. Another move that scares me. Long term, 3 points in 16 games with Colorado after the trade. Even before the trade, 14 points in 60 games. Uh, Good size. Minnesota typically makes good moves in the offseason. So, I don't want to question Bill Guerin and what he's doing over there. He's a tremendous general manager. But this one scares me just in terms of the term. So again, we'll see.
See, indeed, Victor Arvidsson to the Edmonton Oilers, 2 years, $8 million, $4 million a year. Again, this is a pickup I can't hate on. I've been a big fan of Arvidsson since his time in Nashville.
Arvidsson should have been a Ranger. Very, very disappointed. You talk about a fellow Swede that could have played alongside Mika Zibanejad on that top line, and to see him go for 2 years, 4 million a season. Again, I touched on earlier in the episode. I love what Edmonton has done this offseason. You can add this move as a big reason why. Arvidsson's a real good player, and he's a winner. He's won championships overseas even before he got himself to the National Hockey League, and has carved out a real good career for himself with Nashville. And again, he had 2 consecutive seasons right before going to LA where he had 28 points and 25 points respectively. How does he bounce back? 49 points and 59 points, and an injury-riddled season this past year, but it's a value pickup. Edmonton really hit a slam dunk there. Hit a home run. You don't hit a slam dunk. You hit a home
Hit a slam dunk.
run.
Nice. Nice. Back to the Oilers for a second. Excuse me. Back to the Carolina Hurricanes for a second. William Carrier, $2 million a season for 6 years. I mean, with how much shit, how many guys they lost this offseason, it's going to be, they need guys signed long term. This is a
I
depth
really,
guy.
I really like Carrier as a player. I think he's a pretty good two-way forward. I'm scared again. This one scares me. And the AAV doesn't scare me. I understand where you're coming from in terms of Carolina just needing more bodies. But 7 years.
Well, six, but
I'm
still.
sorry, 6 years, but still paying him through his age 35 season. It's long. It's a long-term deal. But $2 million, again, where the cap is in 3 or 4 years, $2 million is going to be like a $700,000 contract is now. So,
Bro.
even though the
Yeah.
term isn't great, you're not paying him anything. So
Speaking of guys that got paid, Steven Stamkos, Nashville Predators, 4 years, $8 million a season. He actually left Tampa Bay.
I
I
mean,
still can't get over this one.
what a failure by Julian Brisebois. I mean, I Lightning fans are pissed. NHL fans are pissed. And Shades, let me know if you feel the same way, right? There are just some players in sports that has to stick around with the same team his entire career. And for me, with the success Steven Stamkos has had, a draft pick of the Tampa Bay Lightning, a former #1 overall selection, to see him go that easily. And again, like I talked about before, the Tampa Bay Lightning cleared cap space, a significant amount of it, in trading Mikhail Sergachev.
Yep.
I really thought this was due to them bringing back Steven Stamkos on a similar deal that his teammate got. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Nashville pounces. They add Stamkos on top of Marchessault. Barry Trotz isn't messing around. He wants to see and again, the Predators were in a rebuilding state last year. And I think Barry Trotz saw his team overachieve. And what do you do when you see your team overachieve? You don't just sit back and let them struggle the following year. How about you add to it? How about you make a push farther than where they got in the postseason? Again, they took Vancouver to 7 games.
Yep.
7. So that's a lot to be proud of based off of the roster they had last year. And you got to ask yourself, and I'll ask you this. If you added Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos to the Predators team that lost in 7 games to the Vancouver Canucks, what's their ceiling in the Western Conference?
Good moves,
Great,
man.
great move. So, but a failure on the part of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and their fan base has a right to be upset.
Yep, that's what happens when you offer your captain $3 million after all he's done for you. Not good. Not a good look. Not a good look by the Lightning at all.
And again, you can't look at the term and say, the Lightning were probably scared off. No, 4 years, that
No.
would make Stamkos a career member of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and
Yep.
could set up well to where he could retire, head off into the sunset, and play his entire career with just one team. But that's not what happens. And let me tell you, I'll finish it on this. To see Stammer in gold next year or in yellow,
It's gonna be odd.
it's gonna be really, really weird. It's gonna
Yep.
be really weird.
To stick with the Predators for a second, Brady Shea, another guy that the Hurricanes lost. 7 years, $7 million a season. You want to talk about contracts that scare me? This is one of them. Don't get me wrong, he earned a pay raise from his last contract, but I mean, 7 million for 7 years for Brady Shea, that don't work for me, brother. And I actually like Shea, but he going from a good coach team in Carolina defensively to a good coach defensive team in Nashville. I mean, this might end up working out, but that's a turn that scares me. If it was like 3 or 4 years, I would feel a lot better about this if I was a Nashville fan, but that's lengthy and
Yeah,
pricey.
the last contract that Shea signed kind of scared me. And I believe he was making $5.5 million. And hey, he outperformed or maybe not outperformed, but
Good
he
value.
performed to what he was being paid. And again, 47 points in 80 games last year. He's pretty good defensively, 9 points in 11 playoff games, had 8 assists. And of course, he has the one goal in overtime in game 4 against the Rangers on the power play. But again, I digress. I like Shea as a player. I like Shea as a person. He played really well in his last contract, so I understand why Nashville isn't too afraid of a 7-year deal. I, for one, am. So this one's going to be interesting to watch over the course of its duration, contract-wise.
Absolutely. The Toronto Maple Leafs re-signed Matt Murray to a 1-year deal, 875,000. LOL, moving on. Danton Heinen to the Vancouver Canucks. 2 years, 2.25 million. That's a solid depth pickup for Vancouver
I've liked Tynan for a while. I thought he
since
was
he was
pretty
on Boston. Yep.
good, when he was on Boston. Good two-way player. And again, Vancouver needs more of that. So
Yep.
good pickup.
Yep. Speaking of Boston, Elias Lindholm, 7 years, 7.75 million. Oh boy, he got paid. This one doesn't scare me as much as the Shea contract, but I don't know what Boston, they've had a very up and down last couple of years. Even though they've had good regular season success, I just don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish. But I like the pickup in Lindholm.
If I was scared on the last few, I don't know what I should be. I'm terrified. This has the potential to be the worst contract in the league. I said Slavin has the potential to be the best contract in the league. This has the potential to be the worst. It's where I'm at.
All
I
right.
mean, 7 years, the cap hit where it's at. Boston has liked Lindholm for a very long time. They wanted him from Vancouver even after they acquired him from the Calgary Flames this past season. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but again, 7 years and at the money that's where it's at. I just
Don't know.
Boston, what are you doing? I just I just don't know. 7 years is a lot.
Yeah.
And 7 million plus is a lot too. So
Yeah, no, that don't work for me, brother. Kevin Stenlund to Utah, 2 years, 2 million a year. Looking for a good depth piece. I think they'll be okay with that one.
Stanley Cup champion. There's
Yep.
value there. And Utah continues to add more and more. I
Yep.
don't hate it.
Hey, 2 years, 2 million for a guy that can play both center and the wing. That's good depth piece right there. I like it.
You'll take that.
Oh yeah. Cam Talbot to the Detroit Red Wings, 1 year, excuse me, 2 years, $2.5 million a season, 36 years old, backup. Detroit, was obviously having some goalie problems there for a while, but I don't mind this contract for Detroit because, 2.5 million for a backup goalie in today's day and age, that's actually not bad. And Cal Talbot has proved in the past that he's a good, worthy backup goaltender. Former Ranger.
Scares me.
2.5 million for 2 years scares you.
Yes.
Interesting.
I didn't think Talbot was very good in LA, and I didn't think he was very good in Ottawa either. Again, he's a backup. I love him for what he did for the Rangers. Of course, you remember when Lundqvist got hit in the neck and he came in and his miraculous run. I'll never forget that, especially
Fantastic.
a young hockey fan at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know how much Detroit improves here. Of course, the backup goaltending position was always a question mark for them, and it's 2.5 million a season or 1.75 a year.
Oh, sorry. Talbot, 2.5.
2.5 million a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't love it. Again, like the term is short, so again, not a lot of risk to it. I don't love it.
Brendan
For
Dillon
things.
to the New Jersey Devils, 3 years, $4 million a season. Like the player, I don't know if I love that cap hit for a guy that is probably going to be playing on their third defense pair. But hey, New Jersey shoring up their defense and their goaltending this offseason. Good moves.
Can you disclose the terms of the contract one more time? I'm sorry.
3 years, $4 million a season.
They bring in a defenseman with size after trading away Kevin Ball. Again, I don't think that the term is bad. I don't think that the cap hit is bad. Brendan Dillon is not here to provide you offense. He is here to be a defensive shutdown D-man. And again, in this day and age, with the cap going up, that's what you have to pay. Another good deal for the Devils.
Yep. They're going to be scary this season. But on to Jake DeBrusk going to the Vancouver Canucks. 7 years, $5.5 million per season. I actually like the cap hit here for Vancouver. I don't know if I love the term because, DeBrusk, it took him a little while to get going. Then he kind of had something there for a while. Then he kind of went down again before he went back up. So this could be an up and down signing, but I'm kind of in the middle of this one. Don't love it, don't hate it.
I, for one, love it.
I had a
I love
feeling you were going to.
Yeah, $5.5 million again, 7 years. There's always a ton of risk to 7 years. But
But
again,
he's 27.
he's 27, and a contract taking him through his age 34 season is not the worst thing in the world. But let me tell you, when you're 4 years into that contract, $5.5 million cap hit, if he continues his upward trajectory, that's going to be a steal. And I think that Jake DeBrusk is a player. Had 40 points last year in 80 games, 50 points the season before that. I think we could see a 20+ point increase from DeBrusk from this past season to this year being with the Canucks. He always had issues in Boston. If you remember going back about a season and a half ago, he wanted out of Boston. He's since rescinded that trade request. But again, maybe the situation's not right for you. There's a ton of talent here. Former first-round pick. I see a jump from DeBrusk going to Vancouver. I'm going to come back to this at the end of next season. I want to see where I'm at.
Maple Leafs sign another goalie, Stanley Cup champion Anthony Stolarz, 2 years, $2.5 million per. They're just trying to get literally anything from their goaltending position. Stolarz is a backup. They're hoping to run with Woll. Who knows if this is going to work out, knowing their goaltending situation the last several years.
Yeah, going back with Talbot, I think $2.5 million is a little bit rich. But again, as the cap continues to go up, it's going to, the value is going to make more sense. I, for one, actually like Stolarz. People forget he appeared 27 games, this past season during the regular season, 2.03 goals against average and a 925 save percentage. That's a guy who has NHL experience, who most recently has performed well in the regular season, and you have a little bit of a question mark in Joseph Woll, just in case he comes out and he really struggles. You have a guy like Stolarz who can step in, and you won't see too much of a drop off, for a few games. So.
Yep, and I'm just going to kind of run through a whole bunch of signings here because it's guys at this point in their career, they're either backup goalies or depth players. So we got Matt Duchene, 1 year, 3 million with Dallas, coming
Yep.
off a good season with them. Good re-sign.
Yeah, I love it. I agree.
Jonathan Drouin back to the Avalanche, 1 year, 2.5 million. They're hoping to spark magic with him again.
Hate it because the Rangers were in on Drouin, and I would have loved to have him on the right wing at 1 year, 2.5 million. I like the player. I think he's
Yeah,
done well last couple of years. So good
yeah,
goaltender.
yeah. We're gonna get back to Colorado in a few, but because their cap situation is nuts. Tyson Jost, Carolina Hurricanes, 1 year, 775,000, former 10th overall pick, never worked out with Colorado. Carolina's hoping to get something with how much they lost.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Jost, and Carolina does a good job of rebuilding these guys' career, especially under Rod Brindamore. So
Yep, true. Former Carolina Hurricane Jake Bean, Calgary Flames, 2 years, 1.75 million. Depth defenseman. Again, he's okay. But you and I have both said it. We don't know what Calgary's doing.
agreed.
Florida, Tomas Nosek, 1 year, 775,000. Decent depth piece. I mean, the cap hit is near the minimum. I don't
Love
hate
it.
it. Yeah.
Love it. Bill Zito continues to crush it with every
Oh
move
yeah.
he makes. I love it.
Derek Forbert, Vancouver, 1 year, 1.5 million. Depth defenseman. Like it.
Yep. Yep.
Stefan Nosen or Nason. However
Nason.
you pronounce
You got
Nason. 3 years, 2.75 million with New Jersey. I like the player acquisition. 2.75, not horrible.
I absolutely love it. One of my favorite free agent signings. Again, just another terrific move for New Jersey.
Yeah, and another piece that Carolina lost.
Yep. A
Matt
valuable piece.
Grzelcyk. Yeah, seriously, good move. Matt Grzelcyk, Pittsburgh, 1 year, 2.75. They're hoping to strike something with him because I don't know, he was at one point highly touted in Boston and things just didn't work out. So,
Yeah, they're looking for a career resurgence out of Grzelcyk. I think the finances are a little rich, but we know 1 year and Pittsburgh has money to spend. So
yep. Casey DeSmith, Dallas Stars, 3 years, $1 million per. He was supposed to be at one point the starting goaltender in Pittsburgh. That did not work out. Now he's a backup on the Dallas Stars.
Wedgwood signs elsewhere that we'll talk about, but the backup
We'll bring
goaltender.
that up right now. He signs in Nashville, 2 years, $1.5 million. The goalie carousel this offseason was in full motion.
Yeah, but I actually like the deal for Dallas. $1 million for 3 years, and the Smith is serviceable. He's definitely good enough as a backup. I think might be the best value backup in the league at 3 years, $1 million per.
Yeah. Hey, two good goalie signings right there.
Wedgwood too. I like him with Nashville. So
Right. Michael Amadio, 3 years, $2.6 million per with Ottawa. I don't, I mean, I personally don't love that one.
I like Amadio a lot. But $6 million, that's super rich. But just
Yeah,
going back
2.6. Yeah.
going back to the Nashville point really quick, with Wedgwood. I know we'll talk about the Saros re-signing, but again, you sign Wedgwood and Askarov is ready to come up from the American Hockey League. I just want to put this in there. I think Askarov is one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, in the AHL, and he has the potential to be a really good National Hockey League goaltender. So to sign Wedgwood, I think that opens up a pretty valuable trade piece on the market, but we'll talk about Nashville.
Oh yeah. Now this one really caught my eye when I saw the number on this one. Seattle signs Chandler Stevenson, 7 years, 6.25 million. Holy overpay.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Stevenson, and even I think this is a little bit of an overpay. But again, you can't blame Stevenson for cashing out.
Yep.
But Seattle
What are you
has now
doing?
signed 2 7-year deals with Montour and Stevenson. Both are a bit scary.
Oh yeah. You're scared. Liam scared everybody.
I am, but again, they had money to spend, and I could be completely wrong. And Seattle, could be back in the playoffs next year. Hope that'd be awesome to see.
Going from one 7 year deal to the next. Matt Roy, Washington, 7 years, 5.75 million. Not bad.
Yep, depth defenseman.
Yeah, not bad. Garnet Hathaway, Philly, 2 years, $2.4 million a season. Little rich for me, but for 2 years on that team, I think he'll work out.
Yeah, I like Hathaway a lot. I really liked him when he was a Capital. 2.4 million, It's a little bit high, but again, Philly wants to retain the players who have played well for them this past season. Hathaway was one of them.
Yes, sir. Stanley Cup champion Ryan Lomberg, Calgary Flames, 2 years, $2 million per. Great pickup for them. But again, what are they doing?
Yeah, I like Lomberg a lot, but I'm not sure what the move is here. So
Neither do I. Former Ranger Brendan Smith to the Dallas Stars, 1 year, $1 million. Depth guy at this point in his career. I wish him the best. I had a love-hate relationship with him when he was here, but he started his time here good and he ended his time here good. So that's how I choose to remember him.
Ryan Suter gets bought out by the Stars. They have a need in their bottom six. And again, like you said, I was a big fan of Brendan Smith as a Ranger. And he had a good start and a good finish, and that makes you tend to forget the stuff in between. But again, I'll never forget him standing up to Tom Wilson, at a time when the Rangers didn't have a lot of veterans, and that took some cojones to do. So Smith is a warrior. I'm happy, he got a 1 year deal in Dallas.
Oh yeah.
Chance to win a cup, which would be nice.
Two former Rangers in a row. Erik Gustafsson, Detroit Red Wings, 2 years, $2 million a season. This one just puzzles me. How do you give this guy more than 1 year after the miserable season he just had? Granted, he started out strong, but he ended as bad as it could be.
Yeah, it's this is an interesting move, and for Gustafson, right? He's on his fifth team in the last 3 years, so moving around quite a bit. And Detroit just wants to rebuild their blue line. And again, I think they might be coming from the same mentality that the Rangers had when they signed Gustafson. Back when they did. An offensive-minded guy who can help on the power play.
Yep. I mean, Detroit's been a puzzling team this offseason too, but again, we'll get back to it. Mike Riley to the New York Islanders, 1 year, 1.25 million. Depth guy, not a bad move.
Big fan of Riley. Loved him as a Bruin, and I thought he played really well for the Islanders. So that's a good deal for them.
Matt Dumba, who is somehow only 29, 2 years, $3.75 million a season with the Dallas Stars after coming, from the Lightning, being a deadline acquisition for them this past offseason. Uh, man, boys, he had a little bit of a fall from grace, a little bit, but 2 years at 3.75, not terrible.
Yeah, again, with the future of Niels Lundqvist on the Stars, uncertain, and of course Ryan Suter getting bought out, you want to get more serviceable NHL defensemen in there. So again, I don't hate the move. I think 3.75 million might be pushing it in terms of kind of what you want to pay the player, but 2 years doesn't take on any risk at all for me.
Next notable signing, Ilya Lyubushkin to the Dallas Stars, 2 years, $3.25 million per. Former Leafs great.
Yeah, I don't really understand this one.
Another overpayment a little bit.
Yep. And again, maybe Dallas is hoping for a turnaround, I guess.
Speaking what could be an overpayment, Anthony Duclair to the New York Islanders, 4 years at $3.5 million. This guy has had a very up and down NHL career. That contract scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I don't love the term, but I really like the AAV, especially with the trajectory of the cap. And Duclair, I thought he was pretty good coming over to the Tampa Bay Lightning last year. Maybe his production tailed off a little bit in the playoffs, but for the Islanders, they just need goal scoring on the wings. And Duclair provides that.
Yep. Jack Campbell signs with the Detroit Red Wings. Again, they've had a very polarizing offseason, but they get him near league minimum. They're hoping. I think they're going to try and bury him in the AHL. We'll see what happens.
Reclamation project again.
Definitely.
They bring in Talbot, and I yeah, I don't really understand it.
No.
Stevie Y is confusing me.
Yeah. It's confusing me. Now he's
But never bet against Stevie Y. He's one of the best hockey minds in the game, so maybe it works.
maybe. David Perron to the Ottawa Senators, 2 years, $4 million a season. He's 36, but I mean, this guy has been honestly probably one of the more underappreciated forwards across the entire league over the past probably 8 to 10 years. So, I mean, this is probably his last contract where he's going to get several million, and honestly, good for him. I like the pickup for Ottawa too, but we'll see if he lives up to that at 36.
Yeah, it's again a lucrative contract. But Perron's been a pretty good power play producer. Perhaps that's where Ottawa, sees him sliding in. So again, 36, there's always risk signing to a player on a multi-year deal, to that type of contract. But I don't think Perron is one that's gonna bite them. I think this is an okay move. I think it's pretty good to where they want to go. So.
Speaking of an okay move, Colorado 1 year, 800,000 for Calvin DeHaan because they need bodies cheap. Because they're in a bad cap situation, which we'll dive into like for a minute at the end of this. But Anthony Beauvillier to the Pittsburgh Penguins 1 year, 1.25. They're hoping for a change of scenery with him spark something.
Yeah, you talk about Gustafson playing for 5 teams in the last 3 years. Beauvillier, is approaching journeyman status. I really like Calvin DeHaan. He's got pretty good underlying numbers. And again, Colorado's in a really tough cap situation right now. To get him in at 700K 1 year, an underrated signing.
Yep. Now back to Chris Tanev. 6 years, $4.5 million per with the Maple Leafs. He is definitely not lasting this contract. He is definitely getting bought out and retiring early before this contract is up.
Yeah, I think it's a strong possibility, and that's even, coming from me, a guy that really likes Tanev. And again, like I talked about just before, that he was super valuable for the Dallas Stars during their Stanley Cup playoff run. But Toronto, they clearly want to win now. They bring in Ekman Larson on a multi-year deal. Now they bring in Tanev on a multi-year deal. Shades, this could go one of two ways. This could help lead Toronto's to a Stanley Cup championship, and then we look at Brad Treliving. And again, we sing his praises for finally, bringing the Maple Leafs some sustained success. Or, like you said, Shades, we could have two players that very well could be bought out on the back end for the Maple Leafs. And if they go another few years not making that playoff run, and Tanev is holding them down, especially that contract too, alongside Ekman Larson, I'm not scared. I'm not terrified. I am running out of the apartment because I'm that scared.
Hmm.
So
I think it's a very buyout friendly contract from what I heard. So that's probably why it was signed. That's what I
we'll
heard.
see. Time will
Yep.
tell.
Time will tell. Warren Fogle, Los Angeles Kings, 3 years, $3.5 million a season. This one scares me a little bit. Bottom
Yeah,
six forward.
I completely disagree.
Really?
Completely and utterly disagree with you, Shades. And again, I feel like this makes good dialogue, right? I don't want to agree with you on every single signing. But for me, I think Fogel's a budding star. I do. I do. I think next year in LA, I would not be shocked if he puts up 55 to 60 points.
We'll see.
I thought Fogel was a great Oiler. He had a career year this past season. I would have
I,
loved Rangers to sign the contract that he signed with LA.
I just remember his time in Carolina. And while he was decent, I didn't think he lived up to, the hype that was surrounding him at the time. But we'll see.
Yeah, he's 28 years old now.
Yeah.
And again, there's a case to be made, or, is he what he is? But again, I think there's more coming from Fogel. So that's a guy I'm gonna circle as to have a better year next season, significantly so.
In a surprising move, the Dallas Stars re-signed Niels Lundqvist 1 year, 1.25 million. I'm actually shocked that contract got signed. Former Ranger great.
Yeah, it got to a point where Pete DeBoer really didn't trust Lundqvist enough to play him
Nope.
consistently. And if you're Jim Nill, you give up a first round pick that becomes Gabe Perreault, who, by the way, is a top 10 prospect in all of hockey right
Yeah,
now. So I think Dallas needs to sign that contract to retain any value in that trade that they made with the Rangers. Maybe he comes in, with a fresh mindset in the offseason and kills it next year. And I hope he does. But I don't know. I don't know. This could be the end of the line for Niels Lundqvist. Because if your coach
yeah.
doesn't believe in you, you know, what's your status? I don't know.
Speaking of what's your status, Corey Perry possibly signing his last contract. 1 year, 1.15 million, back with the Oilers to try to win a cup.
Love it. Love it. I loved Perry as an Oiler. He just continues to be the most unlucky player in all of hockey. Every single team he joins loses in the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah,
Outside,
that's like the luckiest of the unluckiest. They're the unluckiest of the luckiest, whichever one you want to go with.
but I think it says a lot about this Oilers team that Perry wants to run it back.
Yeah. Yep. Capo Kakinen to the Winnipeg Jets, 1 year, 1 million. Backup goalie to Hellebuck. Not much else that needs to be said there.
Yep.
Hakanpaa, Maple Leafs, 2 years, $1.5 million per. This is my opinion, sneaky good signing by them. That one flew under the radar.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Hakanpaa, but
For
again, you
one and a
can't
half million, that's not bad.
yeah, you can't go wrong. You can't
No.
go wrong with a 1 year deal. So
Shane Gostisbehere, Carolina Hurricanes, 3 years, 3.2 million. This could go either really good or really bad.
yeah, I agree. I don't really want to make a prediction on it because I think a lot of people thought Gostisbehere's career was close to over, and in the past few seasons here, he's played really well. But what does the next 3 seasons hold? I don't know. This one scares me a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Sean Walker, Carolina Hurricanes, 3.6 million for 5 years. Justin was actually saying he's actually kind of a fan of this move because he likes Sean Walker as a player at that cap hit, based on, everything that they lost. So I'm gonna go with his opinion there. But yeah, that's not a bad move considering like all the players they lost.
Yeah, I'm scared.
I love this. We're never gonna use this phrase again this many times in an episode, probably ever. I love this. Joel
This
Edmondson to that
scares me.
Los Angeles Kings. four
Yeah,
years, 3.85 million. I actually really like Joel Edmondson. I don't know how I feel about that contract though.
terrified.
Enough said. Enough said. Uh, to stay on the Kings for a second. Trevor Lewis, 1 year, 800,000. He's 37 at this point. This could possibly be his last contract. You have to say that with anybody in their high 30s or mid to high 30s, hoping to win another cup with them. Phoenix Copley, 1 year, 825,000. Going to be the backup. Not much else to say there.
Yep.
UC Saros, though. Holy crap. I mean, we touched upon this earlier. 8 years, $7.74 million a season. Askarov is as good as gone. We all thought Saros was going to be gone, but he re-ups in Nashville. This is a great move by them. Now it's going to be, time will tell what the return is going to be for Askarov when they eventually deal him. But this is proven goaltender, 30 years old. I have a feeling this contract is going to be a steal for 5 years. The last three, we'll see. But as of right now, I think this is a good move for Nashville.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think Askarov is the one that you trade of the two. I would have gone with the younger goaltender with upside. I mean, why did you select him in the first round in the 2020 draft at number 11? I mean, how many goaltenders have we seen gone inside the top 15 in the NHL draft? I mean, there's a reason why he was as highly touted as he was and still is. He's 22 years old, Shades. And again, we just talked about the signing that they made of Scott Wedgwood. Let me tell you, Scott Wedgwood is not going to play in NHL Milwaukee. He's just not. He played really well in Dallas, was a really good backup to Jake Ottinger. I mean, you could give Askarov another run as the starter, but again, you just extended Saros long term. So what's the ceiling for Askarov, a backup goaltender? I mean, this guy's supremely talented. I think Nashville is waiting to find the right trade partner. I hope that they do, because I'm a real big fan of the player. So
Yep. One more goalie to talk about. Eric Comrie, Winnipeg, 2 years, 825,000. Depth goaltender. Colin Miller, Winnipeg Jets, 2 years, $1.5 million. Decent depth piece. I like that contract.
so do I. Yeah.
Like it. Toffoli, Tyler Toffoli, San Jose Sharks, 4 years, $6 million a year. Yikes.
Trying to reach the cap floor.
Yep, but that's a
Trying to
yikes.
compete. Trying to compete. But it's good that Toffoli got one last payday. It's a
Yeah,
solid contract, 4 years, 24 million at his age. So
that's still a yikes for me. Just particularly going with that team. Jeff Skinner, Edmonton Oilers, 1 year, $3 million. Will he finally make the playoffs? I hope so. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I
he
love
will.
Chuck Skinner. Again, he doesn't
That's a
provide you
good
too
sign.
much on the defensive side of the puck, but this guy can score like the wind. And guess what? That guy in the middle, either guy in the middle, Leon Draisaitl or Connor McDavid, they will set you up every single time. So this could be a nice 35 plus goal season for Skinner upcoming. And yes, he will be in the playoffs.
Yes,
He will.
yes, he will. Looking forward to it. To stay on Edmonton for a second, Matthias Janmark resigns 3 years, 1.45 million. Very good deal.
Love it.
Very
And
good deal.
continues to kill it. Yep.
Oh yeah. Alexander Wenberg, former Ranger great, 2 years, 5 million per in San Jose. Wholly overpay, but they need to get to the cap floor.
Yeah, no comment. Yeah, I like Wenberg enough as a player, but yeah, if you thought Toffoli at 6 years, 24 million, was tough, then take a look at this contract too. In terms of
4 years, 24 million for Toffoli.
4 years, yeah, 4 years, 6 million per, but still, but yeah,
Just
look at this contract. It's not much better, and that's even with saying that the term is low on this deal. So
oh yeah. You know things are bad when even Liam says no comment. You know
yeah,
that he's terrified.
Mike Greer loves his former Rangers, huh?
I guess so. But TJ Brody, Chicago Blackhawks, 2 years, 3.75 million. That's decent pickup for them. I like that.
Yeah, big fan of that. Brody has suddenly become underrated. And like I said, Chicago's trying to compete, and they'll be in the mix next year. I'm not going to say they'll be, close to a playoff team, but they will be in the conversation. They won't be irrelevant, like they were this past year outside of Bedard. So
Yep. Dmitry Kulikov, 4 years, 1.15 million with the Panthers. Again, they need depth players. Kulikov was pretty good for them. It's 4 years, but it's 1.15 million. So I like that.
steal.
Yep.
I love Kulikov. He played really well in the playoffs, and again, 1.15 million. I'll take that every single day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Oh yeah. Ilya Samsonov, two of the Vegas Golden Knights, 1.8 million for a year. He's an all right backup. I mean, that don't hate it.
Yeah, I don't know what let me say this, the goaltending tandem for the Vegas Golden Knights could be a bit tumultuous this season. I like Hill, Stanley Cup champion, but again, you pair him up with Samsonov. I don't know. And this seemed like a move, that they thought of pretty quickly after Logan Thompson requested his trade out. And again, they find the backup to Hill. So
Yep. I mean, Vegas also made two other signings that are relatively, you know, low on the totem pole. Pavel Deforiev, 2 years, 1.835 million, alongside another 2 year contract worth 825,000 for Caden Korzak. So they're trying to get youngish players to outperform cheap contracts. Well,
yeah,
actually, both of those guys are 23, so that's exactly what they're trying to do. Last
I
but
like
not,
a lot.
oh yeah,
Big fan.
and another surprising contract. Montreal resigns Yurov Slavkovsky, 7.6 million for 8 years. Former first overall pick from a few years back. When I saw this, I went, "Laugh is gonna get a bag."
Lap's gonna get a bag, and again, I think one of the personalities on Twitter made a really good point. I think it was Jay Fresh. He said the same thing, and if you don't follow Jay Fresh, go follow him. He's awesome. He said the same thing about Stutzla when he signed a similar type contract with the Ottawa Senators. If in 5 years Yurov Slavkovsky is not worth that cap hit, Montreal is fucked. So you know what? You're better off just making that deal and hope that he reaches his potential. But I have no worry with Stutzla, and I have no worry with Slavkovsky. They're going to be studs, and Lafreniere is going to get paid.
Oh yeah, 100%. Vincent Desharnais to the Vancouver Canucks, 2 years, 2 million. I saw a lot of people clowning on this one. It was kind of funny.
Underrated piece of the back end for the Edmonton Oilers, though, en route to their Stanley Cup run. He's got some size. I view him as a Zadorov replacement, but yeah, has the potential to be a top deal. So
Yep. Adam Henrique back with the Oilers, 2 years, $3 million per. With the way he played for them, that's pretty good.
Edmonton just continues to crush it, move after move.
Yep. Uh, Goalie carousel again. James Reimer, Buffalo Sabres, 1 year, 1 million. Chris Driedger, Florida Panthers, 1 year, 795,000. That is the last of the goaltenders that we will talk about in this episode. but again, backup goalies at this point.
Love Drieger, happy he's returning to Florida.
Oh yeah. To continue, we have Sean Monahan with signing with the Columbus Blue Jackets, 5 years, $5.5 million. I actually don't hate this.
Yeah, not a fan. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Monahan, $5.5 million over 5 years, $5.5 million per season. I see what Columbus is trying to do. They're definitely adding, they're definitely getting themselves better. And at this point in their rebuild, that's what they should be looking to do. Um, but I always ask myself, would I be happy if my team signed this contract? And I say no. So, but we'll see. I hope Monahan, he's been a good player at points in his career. So it's in there.
Yeah, they're hoping to spark the magic between him and Goodrow again from back in the day.
Okay. All right. I didn't think about that. I actually, I like the mindset. I do. But the term in the AV, a little high.
Right. Speaking of, a lot of money, Victor Hedman, 4-year extension with the Tampa Bay Lightning, $8 million a season. You called this a steal, and I'm like, he's 34. We'll see.
Yeah, again, I think this is more of, does this make logistical sense? As it is, we kind of got to do right by our star player and quite frankly, our future captain. I mean, Tampa Bay lost their captain in Steven Stamkos, and I would be shocked if Victor Hedman does not take his spot, with a net distinction. Again, like this is a consistent 70 to 80 point defenseman, depending on the number of games that he plays. But it does take him through his age 42 season. There's a lot of risk there, but Tampa Bay could not afford not to lock him down. And I feel like, I'm sorry, 4 years, you said?
4 years.
Sorry, I got that mixed up. Yeah, so it doesn't take him to his age 42 season. It takes him to his age 38 season. And I think $8 million with the way the cap is, I think that's a steal cap wise. And I'm not upset at the term because you got to keep him for the rest of his career. You can't do this to another player. So another homegrown player.
I just realized him and Stamkos signed the exact same contract.
Yes, they did.
That's a fun little fact.
But well, let me ask you. I mean, let's talk about it for a second. If you were Julien Brisebois and you could only sign one, which one would you sign? And I know they signed Gensel, so it makes more sense to sign Hedman. But I'm just saying, just in terms of the player, what deal makes more sense to you? Tell me.
I don't know because both of them have an injury history. So
I think it's a no-brainer. I think Stamkos 5-on-5 production has
it's
dipped,
slipped. Absolutely, it has. Yeah.
and I think Hedman's still a number one defenseman. So again, I
Okay.
signed Hedman over Stamkos, and you couldn't keep both. I mean, you could if you didn't sign Gensel, but
Yeah.
that's where Tampa decided to take this thing. So
Uh,
I like the deal though. 4 years.
okay, you got me there. You got me
Yeah.
there. Colorado signs Eric Brandstrom 1 million, excuse me, 1 year, 1 year, 900,000. Again, they need cheap contracts. They're trying to go the Vegas route at this point.
Yeah, I think this has the potential to be one of the best contracts signed on day one of free agency. 1 year, no risk.
Well,
Brandstrom,
actually,
like I
we're in day
was a
two now.
well, day two, he was a plus player with the Ottawa Senators, same team where Jacob Trouba was a -30. He's still young enough. He's a former first round pick. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a good year for Colorado. I'm circling him. I know I use the word a lot, but he's a guy I'm watching.
Going back to Vegas for a second, 1 year, 1.075 for Victor Olofsson, former Sabre. Again, they're trying to recreate the magic from last year. Cheap players outperforming their contracts.
And like we talked about with Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau, Jack Eichel and Victor Olofsson were very good together when they were in Buffalo. So perhaps he takes Jonathan Marchessault's spot on that right wing alongside Eichel. And again, this is a player with, I believe, a 40-goal season in Victor Olofsson. He's dropped
I
off,
think so.
steadily. But again, if you did it once, you can do it again. And he's back with his number one center. So
The other Sebastian Aho got signed by the Pittsburgh Penguins, 2 years, $775,000 each. I always get a kick out of that when he gets signed.
yeah,
Tomas Tatar back to the New Jersey Devils, 1 year, 1.8 million. This was kind of surprising.
another deal that I love. Again, like Tatar was happy to be a Devil, and the Devils were happy to have Tatar when they were formerly together. And again, 1 year, 1.8 million, no risk there. So
Yep.
there
Cam
you go.
Atkinson signs with the Tampa Bay Lightning after getting bought out by the Philadelphia Flyers. 1 year, 900,000. This could be a steal, and I think it will be.
I agree.
I hate that I like that move. I really do. I hate that I like it. And I'm going to end this on two former Rangers. One, Colin Blackwell, 1 year, $775,000 in Dallas, depth player. For that cap hit, can't go wrong with Blackwell.
Yeah, I like Blackwell. Good pickup for Dallas.
Yeah, speedy winger who, hey, good. I think he's going to be a good fit in Dallas. And last but not least, the extension that killed me earlier today. Pavel Buchnevich, 6 years, $8 million per season
Yeah.
in St. Louis. Still mad about this trade all these years later.
Yeah, I definitely think, this trade is up there in terms of one that the Rangers probably want to have back. Or most definitely want to have back because Buchnevich, right, is one of the few wingers that found instant chemistry with Kreider and Zibanejad. And again, he signs 8 years in St. Louis. He's really found a home there. And again, I'm sorry, 6 years, right? 6 years,
6 years, yeah.
6 years, 48 million, so $8 million a season. I like the move for the team and the player. I'm happy Booch got paid.
Yeah, he earned it. Still my boy, but still kills me that we traded him for nothing.
You and me both. You and me
Yep.
both. Tough to swallow.
Okay, so after we've gotten all that out of the way, this is going to be a insanely long episode. I apologize. Who are some of your winners or your top winner in free agency slash draft slash offseason so far? Because it's been a week and
Well,
a
I
day.
am going to start out with a player.
Hit me.
How about Jake Gensel?
That's a winner. All right.
You sign a long-term contract, in a tax state, where taxes are significantly withheld in Florida, and you're able to make yourself a lot more money. And he is playing alongside Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. I'm pretty confident in saying that that's at least a top three line in the entire NHL. So again, I don't know how the move's going to work out for Tampa Bay, but for Gensel, he got paid. For me, again, I'm going with another non-team. I'm gonna have three, by the way, so I have one more after this. Bill Zito, I mean, with the Florida Panthers, I mean, I know I sang his praises last episode, but there is no better general manager in the league. I mean, you go back to that Kulikov signing, Kulikov, every single team would like to have Dmitry Kulikov in the top six. Stanley Cup champion, 4 years, $1 million a season. He re-ups with Sam Reinhart on the $69 million deal. He had 57 goals in the regular season. You have to bring him back. Every single depth piece that he has brought in, going back to last year, has been a slam dunk. Evan Rodriguez, he brought in, got a lot of flack for that. Guess what? Scores a couple of huge goals in the Stanley Cup Final. But yes, my last winner, it's the Nashville Predators. Again, the Marchessault signing, I definitely gave a little bit of a tough review to, but they get the top player on the market. They go and get themselves Steven Stamkos, and they are pushing. And they re-upped with UC Saros. And again, I didn't really think about this when we were discussing Saros re-signing earlier in the episode. Maybe they don't want to turn to Askarov because this team wants to win a Stanley Cup next year, and you don't put 100% of your faith in a goaltender who has played 2 NHL games. You know who's played a lot of NHL games and has been really good in the regular season and playoffs? UC Saros. So this tells me that Barry Trotz is not messing around, and he wants to bring a Stanley Cup to Nashville. So they're my biggest winner, and I don't think the Marchessault contract is going to look good 3 or 4 years from now, but I don't think that matters. I don't think the Predators are trying to win 3 or 4 years from now. I think they look at this year, next year, and the year after that as their window to go and bring it all home. This is the best Predators team they've had since they reached the Stanley Cup Final. It's the best Predators team they've had in 7, 8 years. So
Yep,
those are
one
my
of
winners. Who are
yep.
your
Well,
winners? And then I'll go through my losers here.
well, for the exact same reasons that you just said, Nashville Predators, because for obvious reasons, they got some of the big fishes on the market, and I really think that they're adding with what they had from last year, they're going to be a team to be, a force to be reckoned with in the West. So they're my winners for sure on that list. New Jersey for sure. I mean, you
Yeah.
get John Marino, you get excuse me, Brett Pesci. Now you get Brandon Dillon too. Brendan Dillon, sorry. Stefan Nason, and now Tomas Tatar. On top of getting Markstrom, I mean, that's some pretty good GMing. I gotta be honest with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are some good winners.
Yeah, and since I want to kind of make it a three, man, that is a oh, how can I forget? Utah Hockey Club. Mikhail
Mm.
Sergachev, Kevin Stenlund, Ian Cole, Yusuf Alamaki, Sean Dursey. You know, those last four guys are contract signings, but trading for Sergachev and John Marino. I mean, like, goddamn,
Yeah.
that just
All great.
wins. Yep.
On
Now
the
on to the losers.
Yes, on the loser side shades, I had three teams for the winners. I only have two teams for the losers because I think there were quite a bit of teams that did really well during this free agency period thus far. Uh,
Question before you state them.
sure.
Do these teams scare you?
Yes, yes, they do. And I have one team out west and I have one team out east. So my team out west, I don't think this is going to come across as too much of a shock. It is the Seattle Kraken, who signed Brandon Montour to the 7-year deal, Chandler Stevenson to the 7-year deal. Again, I could see this going one of two ways. I could see this being an absolute disaster, or I could see this help propel Seattle to competing consistently. But for me, I think it's the former. My team out of the East, it's Toronto. I mean, the Ekman Larson contract, I really didn't like. The Tanev contract, I really don't like the term, and I really don't like the cap hit. And again, that's saying that I like both of those players. But again, I don't know what Brad Tree Living is doing in Toronto here. I just don't know. There were reports that he came out and spoke to Jeff Skinner and talked to him about the possibility of playing alongside Marner and Matthews. Obviously, he goes and signs in a different Canadian market in Edmonton. What are you going to do with Mitch Marner, by the way? Do you believe in this core? Matthews, what's your stance on him? This is Tree Living's first offseason as general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I'm not sure what direction he's really taking them right now. I don't know if they're better right now than they were when they got eliminated in Game 7 against the Boston Bruins. The one saving grace for me is Joseph Woll. I like that signing. He could be that number one consistent goaltender that they really have not had. But again, even with that said, he's a question mark. He's not proven. So for that reason, those two teams are my losers.
Well, I mean, I have an extremely obvious loser in the East, and that's the Carolina Hurricanes, because we've touched upon it so many times this episode with just how much they lost.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no recovering from that. Do I really need to expand on that much more? I don't think I do.
But with the way that Rod Brindamore's teams play, does personnel matter that much? We'll find out. But yeah, they definitely had a lot of players leave, and that's not a good look. So
No, not at all. And I guess just to, go with you, a team out of the West, I might just go with the Avalanche on the sole basis of the current cap situation that they find themselves in.
perfect
Literally,
segue.
as of yesterday, they were two players short of a full roster and they were over the cap
And you can be 10% over the cap
during the summer.
in the off season, but
Yeah.
that's not a lot. So yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are my winner. I obviously, I'm disappointed with the Rangers a little bit, but I feel like Detroit needs to get somewhat of a mention here because I mean, outside of Patrick Kane, what the hell are they doing?
Yeah, I don't know what the Yzer plan is looking like right now. But again, Steve Yzerman's a great hockey mind. So if I'm a Red Wings fan, I would trust him, and I think it's a good sign, at least on the Red Wings side, that they didn't make the move for Jacob Trouba as of yet. But that's a conversation to come.
Yeah, and there have been three extensions since we talked about that whole thing. Shane Pinto, 2 years in Ottawa, 3.75 million a year, 23-year-old center. I think that's a good contract. And just gonna, I don't know who that is, but Nate Schmidt, 1 year in Florida, 800,000. That could be a steal.
Yeah, Nate Schmidt, I believe, got bought out, right?
Yep, by the Winnipeg Jets. Yep,
Winnipeg.
that's a win for Florida right there.
Again, that's Bill Zito. That's
Yeah,
Bill Z for you. Finding value on your blue line. I happen to love Shane Pinto and the player that he is. I know that there were a lot of teams interested, and he had requested a trade out of Ottawa. The fact that he re-signs for 2 years, that's a good thing for the Sens. That's good.
yep. And Schmidt, I mean, it's this, again, like I said, this could be one of the steals of the offseason. So got to give a W to Florida there.
Yep. Especially after losing Ekman Larson. How much of a drop off are you experiencing? I don't think
Probably not too much.
I don't think too much. And again, Ekman Larson got paid what, 3.75 million?
I think so.
So Schmidt got signed for 700,000. So like that's great GMing.
Yeah, literally. Now, moving on to the last topic before we go, and we're definitely over 2 hours at this point, but I apologize again. We need to talk about what happened with the Rangers.
Yeah.
So, first off, let me just get this out of the way. First, when the whole Trouba thing started, it was him getting asked to submit his no trade list, which I didn't even think Drury had the balls to do that in the first place. Then, after the rumors of the Detroit trade and a trade never materializing, it didn't happen. I'm going, all right, so what exactly is going on here? How then, of course, we get earlier today or last night, whenever, rumors of the thing, his wife's medical residency. And as soon as I saw his wife being dragged into this, I immediately went, what the fuck is the organization doing? Not only is this a bad look to your own fans, it's a terrible look across the entire league for any free agent wanting to sign here. And before I throw it to you, everybody on social media attacking his wife, get the fuck off social media. Your account deserves to be banned.
You know, I think this all started with Larry Brooks. And again, he comes out with that article in 4:30 at 4:30 in the morning, the morning after round one of the NHL draft, saying that the Rangers and the Red Wings are working on a deal surrounding Jacob Trouba. First of all, you don't go out and say that. And I find it hard to believe that Chris Drury willingly gave out that information and it legitimately got to Larry Brooks. I think it could have been speculation, to be honest. Do you disagree with me? I think that Chris Drury is one of the most tight-lipped GMs in the league. Say what you want, but I think he's tight-lipped.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, come across that way since he's been GM, but I don't know, something like this, like coming out.
It's
Uh,
unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that it came out. And of course,
yeah,
all Ranger fans ran with it, and they expected Jacob Trouba to get traded on July 1st when he submitted his 15 team no trade list. And again, we shouldn't have made this huge news.
no,
Guess what? He's contractually obligated, whether he's a 100-point defenseman or a struggling defenseman like he was last year, to submit that paperwork. It's not news, okay? That doesn't mean that he's going to get traded. And I feel like Larry Brooks ran with something, maybe a small tidbit of information, went way too crazy with it. And then what are you supposed to do if you're Trouba, right? You have your wife who has to finish her residency in New York, and you're hearing rumors that you're going to get traded out, and you really have no control over it. Hell yeah. If I'm Trouba, I'm a little bit upset by that. I do understand where some fans are coming from, to where they say, if you underperform at your job, like, would you expect your employer to keep you if,
no,
you're underperforming? Yes, the answer is no, but also Jacob Trouba is in the top 1% in his profession. You
at
know,
least pay wise.
being a National Hockey League player,
Yeah,
like, he's a legit National Hockey League player. Okay. This isn't somebody who just sucks, like, he had played on a broken ankle last year. His play has definitely dipped. He's probably not worth $8 million. But for me, every single fan attacking his wife and his family, I mean, it's utterly ridiculous, like you said. Um, you never do that. And again, like, I'll sit here and say Jacob Trouba wasn't a great Ranger last year. And you know what? If you look at the microscopic reason as to why the Rangers got eliminated just in game 6, it's because of Trouba. And it's because he had a horrible read on Sam Bennett's goal, and you go down 1-0. And guess what? You're not going to go and tie the game in Florida in game 6 when they're shutting you down like that. Okay. But also at the same time, I'm a New York Ranger fan. he's a New York Ranger, and as long as he's on my team, I'm going to support him. And if you're a Ranger fan that doesn't support him and his wife, making that decision to stay with the team based off of what's best for their family, then I don't even know what to say to you. You're not a fan. You're not a fan. And I'm not a fan of how Larry Brooks handled this whole situation. I don't think Drury is completely innocent in all of this, but I think he's getting a lot of undeserved flack. And I'll say it right here. I hope Jacob Trouba is a Ranger next season, and I hope he turns it around.
Yep, that's
I'll
fair to say.
be the only one to fucking say it. All right?
That's
All right?
fair to
Because I
say.
feel like he's been put through such a freaking shitstorm. Let's give him a chance to rebuild. And you know what? I definitely think there is something to coming in to training camp with a chip on your shoulder. You're the captain. Come on, step up and prove it. And I have confidence that he's going to do that. He's going to be a pissed off Jacob Trouba next year. He's going to be hunting for heads, baby. And I want him to be a part of the New York Rangers, and I want him to be healthy, and I want him to be our captain when we win the Stanley Cup. That's showing support to your player. And 75% of Ranger fans on that fucking app are not doing that. He's the
Well said.
captain of my favorite team.
Well said.
He
Now,
struggled, but he's captain of my favorite team.
no,
And
I like that you said that. So obviously, I want him to have a bounce back season if he does return, because that is up in the air right now. Would I prefer if they can find a trading partner and improve the team? Obviously, my answer to that is always going to be yes with a player that struggled the last couple of years. So my answer is yes. But attacking his wife and all that, just disgusting. It just absolutely disgusting. Bringing his wife into this, and frankly, some of the people saying his wife should be booed. It's just like, his wife is not the general manager of the team. Barclay Goodrow apparently has a newborn. I forget whether it was a son or daughter. He got put on waivers and claimed by San Jose in a 24-hour span. I don't see anybody, saying anything about that. But again, if he's going to be on the team next year, I want him to have a bounce back season because it's the team I root for. But with the way this whole situation is being handled, if I'm Trouba, what is my motivation to come back and not say fuck you to the team with all this info? Because if my family's being dragged into this, why would I give any effort? That's just me personally.
I wouldn't blame the Rangers organization though for what's happening. I would blame the
There is
media.
there is blame to be thrown out there, but to who specifically leaked that information, we don't know.
And is it legitimate information? And
His wife's residency thing actually is legitimate
no,
information.
I'm talking about the Detroit trade, like and all that
Mm.
stuff. Or is that just speculation? Or is that just to get people riled up? Because that's why the fans are mad. The fans are mad because they expected a trade to come through, and then Brooks comes out with that second article about his wife's residency, and then everybody gets their panties in a bunch. So um, like you said, Shades, I think you made a very good point. If there is a way to trade him, and again, it's not based off of the person he is, it's not based
No,
off of his family, it's not based off of anything. It is $8 million per season for the next 2 years. That's just it. And you
yeah,
know what? Me and you are two diehard Ranger fans, and I can look in your eyes right now, and I can tell you that the Rangers Stanley Cup window is probably not that long. And if you fail to win a Stanley Cup in the next 2 years, I don't know what this team's looking like. Igor Shesterkin wants 14 million a year. Alexei Lafreniere is probably gonna have a breakout season next year, and if you don't re-sign him now, he's gonna command probably even more money than Stützle and Slafkovsky got. So again, the time to win for this team is right now. I would love it if Trouba is a part of the team, but like you said, if there's a deal that makes sense to make the team better, I think you always explore that. But by
yes,
no means do you ruin this player's family life, his entire situation, and his reputation among his fan base, in one fell swoop. And again, Barclay Goodrow is not Jacob Trouba. Okay. Barclay Goodrow was on a tough contract, but he's not your captain. It's a little bit different. And again, Goudreau played in San Jose. He's going back to a familiar spot. For Trouba, where is he going to go? Is he going to stay in the United States? Is he going to go back to Canada? These are all questions that he has to ask himself. And what does his situation look like after a potential deal? So there's so much that goes into this. And I'll just say it just to end it right here, Shades. I really, really hope, just for the sake of the player and for the sake of the Rangers' reputation around the league, that they do not trade Trouba. Because if they do, after all of this has come out, it's going to be a bad look. And like you said, you
Ugly.
made the point before. What player would want to sign a long-term contract with us when you see the two longest term contracts get dissolved in the same offseason and in ugly, ugly fashion with Goudreau and Trouba? This is an ugly situation. And our fans, the media, are right at the forefront of it.
Yep, 100%. Now to somewhat pivot off of that,
Sure.
what?
Pasha. Not a fan of that guy. Barstool. Remember the point he made
Oh,
about
I don't follow anybody on Barstool.
Great point.
I
Just so dumb.
I
Yeah,
try and stay off of Twitter. I really do try.
it's for the best.
Mainly because I just forget to check it. Makes my life a lot easier. But to pivot off that for a second, with the Riley Smith trade and also the impending possible contracts for Lindgren and Schneider, because nothing's been signed yet. And also, I think Ryan Lindgren is currently technically an unrestricted free agent, which why neither one of those two have signed is questionable. Did, which raises the question, did Drury have a plan B? Because it really feels like Riley Smith was a plan C or D.
What do you think that plan B was, though?
I don't know.
It's a question you got to ask. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit
Was
perplexing.
this plan B keeping him and running it back with the same core? That's the question that needs to
I
be
don't think
asked.
I don't think that was ever part of the plan. I think I think Drury at the end of the playoffs, upon getting eliminated by the Panthers, fully expected to get rid of Trouba and Goudreau. I think it was on the top of his list. Clear up the money, sign some guys to help you for next year, and re-sign your key players and just Dirk and Miller and Lafreniere. That's what I thought. And Trouba potentially sticking around puts a big wrinkle into that. So I think there's a chance that maybe we don't see Lindgren back with the Rangers if Trouba's $8 million cap hit stays where it is, you know?
Now that's just going to be another spot on the roster to fill. I mean, we tried, obviously we talked about Riley Smith earlier in the episode. We're going to try and see whether he's going to play on the first or third line because Laff is not leaving Trocheck and Panarin inside. We know that. So that's going to hopefully be a Band-Aid 1 year fix on the first line if everything goes well. If not, we're going to be right back in the same position come the deadline and next offseason. But there's just, I don't know if we have the right GM for this team, man. I really don't. He's been GM for 4 years now. He's had more than one chance to make a game-changing move, and the one big player he traded away came back to bite him badly. Not the
I
player specifically, the trade itself.
it's not that I don't like Drury because I do like Drury. Well, let me tell you, people say that Tom Wilson ruined the Rangers. In a way, he kind of did because Jeff Gordon never deserved to get fired. And you talk about a GM that's helping Kent Hughes over in Montreal smash it. That's Jeff Gordon. I think the Rangers let a gem go in favor of Drury, who was a young, up and coming, top end executive within your hockey operations department. There was talks way before Drury had even accepted the role with the Rangers when he was an assistant that he might have joined Pittsburgh. I think the Rangers were scared of that. They didn't let him interview there. And then before you knew it, Tom Wilson gets into that argument. The Rangers changed their organization. Jeff Gordon goes, Drury comes in, and yeah, the results haven't been great.
No, no, they have not. Now,
But
granted,
sometimes when the expectations aren't high, that's when you overachieve. And I think that might be the case for the Rangers this upcoming season. They don't have a lot of expectations. They
Well,
got
I mean,
worse on paper, I
yeah,
guess, right?
we'll see. I mean, they're coming off a President's Trophy winning season, and so far it's been a puzzling offseason. But yeah, just to bring up Jeff Gordon, the timing of that was just it still baffles me because they're in the middle of a rebuild that they are clearly not finished with yet. And judging how the team has played in the playoffs the last 3 years, they still have a long way to go. So I'm with you that they probably didn't make the right move there. Granted, Gordon wasn't perfect. No GM is, unless you're Bill Zito, apparently. But no,
Best.
it was just it's a puzzling time, and it's getting pretty hard to be a fan of this team at the moment with the current situation going on.
So where would you go? That's my question. How long is the leash on Drury? What if the
It's
if
honestly, he's on the hot seat if I'm Dolan right now.
yeah?
Yeah. If Here's what I'll say. If they play in the playoffs next year like they did this year, he's got to go.
Hmm.
Because I was not a fan of how they were playing even against Washington.
That's even after an Eastern Conference Final appearance?
The team at 5-on-5 has not gotten any better from 2 years ago.
And you look back at some of the trades that he's made.
If not for Shesterkin, this team would be a first and maybe second round exit this year. Or well, almost definitely a second round exit this year. So those are my thoughts on that.
Igor definitely saved our bacon way too many times. And again, wouldn't say the only reason because Lafreniere had a great series as well, but he and Lafreniere were two of the only reasons why, the Rangers even got to 6 games against the Panthers last year. And again, that's going to be a tough decision to make. Igor wants $14 million. $14 million annually. I don't envy the job that Chris Drury has upcoming. And again, like with any team, it could go sideways. And also your camera's gone out of focus.
Of course it has. Once every episode.
Took to the 2 hour and 45-minute mark for it to happen. But yeah, the Rangers are in a scary situation, man. Like it's time to put up this upcoming year.
Yep, and I have a bad feeling we're gonna run it back and just go flame out in the playoffs again.
Right.
I just got a bad feeling. But that is enough of this episode. I apologize for the way we did it. We kind of just went through everything. But next year, don't worry. We got it down pat for next year. And I guarantee you, I say this now, and something's going to change along the way. And it's still going to be like an hour as opposed to like 2.5. But yeah,
But you heard our takes of every single player that has been either acquired or signed
or at
by
least
or
95,
extended.
96% of them.
So now you know about how we feel about most players, in the NHL. And again, like if our takes are bad, let us know. I mean, I got scared a lot this episode, terrified a couple of times. So
Liam scared.
that's gotta be the title of the episode now.
Liam scared. Absolutely, it is. Well, to anybody who actually watched or listened to this whole thing, thank you very much. I promise we will never have an episode this long again. I promise. But yeah, I enjoyed the S'mores Dunkin' cold brew, not sponsored. That was very good. Highly recommend.
Did you finish
Uh,
it?
I have like this much left, but it's kind of, you know,
It's just whipped cream, foam.
screw it. It's good enough to finish.
Start
Hmm.
with the cold brew. Or start with the s'more and with the s'more.
Ah, that was actually no, that really was very good. Actually, I need to try that again. Hopefully, it's not a limited time menu thing. But I have gone on way too long this episode. I'm going to end it right now. Thank you very much, everyone who listened, even to at least part of this, or watched at least part of this. If you listen to the whole thing, you a real one. You're a trooper. Thank you very much. And we will probably be back within the next few weeks. No timetable on the next episode, but something's going to happen at some point because I know Vladimir Tarasenko's still out there. So that
Real
in
quick,
itself might be
would you
worth doing an episode.
would you want him?
Depends on the money. That's all I'll
All
say.
right. We'll see. We'll
Hit that
cliffhanger.
like, hit that subscribe, follow button, whatever platform you're on. Thank you. Sorry. Goodbye, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye. Bye.
Hockey.
Hockey. Yeah.